Chapter 295. Lu Chengdi's unfinished words. Everyone knew that it was only the severity of the situation. However, at this time, they all thought of the worst direction of the situation. It must be known that when the imperial Gui Fei died, although it was not related to the court, but people in a rage would usually use the word, take out their anger, to the extreme. Lu Chengdi, as the emperor of the 9 and 5, had no scruples. The court and the harem could be said to be full of mourning. The current Jin Qinhuang was the treasure in Lu Chengdi's palm. If something happened to him, or if it was because he was attacked in the middle of his mission, it would be said that it was done by water bandits. However, the number of people who would be connected to his mission was definitely not in the minority. The consequences would naturally be even more unimaginable. Who knew if he would, in a fit of anger, cut off the heads of all the related personnel? Therefore, some people's expectations were a bit too perfect, and they were happy a bit too early. When they received the urgent imperial edict, the officials of the 2 counties almost fainted. Did they underestimate the position of Jin Qinhuang in the emperor's heart? Originally, the majority of people were far from losing their heads in the salt policy. Now that something happened to Jin Qinhuang, they might even lose their lives? Then, what was the point of this scheme? Especially the pleading memorials from the officials of Kai Mingfu. They had been handed in early, but because it was not an urgent submission, it had not reached the emperor's desk. After receiving the imperial edict, they hoped that someone would be able to block the memorials. The emperor was in a rage and had originally opened fire on all sides. If this memorial was handed in, wouldn't it be letting the emperor focus fire on Kai Mingfu? The people in the cabinet should be clear about the consequences of this memorial. Moreover, everyone was more or less a community of interests, so they should help, right? Unfortunately, their thinking was too perfect. If the cabinet didn't have Li Hongyuan's people, perhaps it would really be as they wished. However, Ruan Ruizhong, the cabinet's grand secretary who appeared to be neutral on the surface, was essentially serving Jin Qinhuang. After receiving Jin Qinhuang's secret letter, how could he possibly obstruct it? He would only not mind the matter becoming bigger. Faced with everyone's obstruction, Ruan Ruizhong only said, "The memorial can only be temporarily suppressed. Sooner or later, it will be delivered to the emperor's hands. Temporarily, it is fine. If Jin Qinhuang is unharmed, then it is naturally best. If it is confirmed that Jin Qinhuang, at that time, the cabinet that suppressed the memorial will inevitably be purged." Sure enough, everyone who tried to stop him remained silent. Compared to him, other people, even if they had a close relationship with him, could only stand aside. Ruan Ruizhong grasped this point and hit the nail on the head. Then, these memorials were naturally handed over to Lu Chengdi. As expected, it was like adding fuel to the fire. Lu Chengdi exploded again. Although he already knew what happened in Kaming Prefecture, he didn't know the details. "You are asking for punishment now? What were you doing earlier?" Lu Chengdi didn't care how many days the memorials were delayed on the road. He only knew that when his son's life was unknown, a group of people asked for punishment after the fact. In his opinion, this was not asking for punishment, but trying to clear their names and shirk responsibility. If they really had the time to write memorials to ask for punishment, why didn't they protect his son after the accident to prevent another accident? When the accident happened again, why didn't they think about searching or saving people? Why did they write a bunch of nonsense here? The Kaming Prefecture had 30,000 official soldiers, but they let 100 bandits sneak into the city and rush into the prince's residence. What the hell were they doing? This was also a time of peace. If there was a war and such a thing happened, wouldn't it be the same as handing over the city to others? Well, this was a bit of sophistry. If there was a war, the gate would be tightly shut. How could more than 100 unknown people sneak into the city? Moreover, they were not unknown people at all. However, would Lu Chengdi think about this now? He wouldn't. He only thought about his son. He and his most beloved woman's only son. He understood very well that the latter was the main point. The governor of the Kaming Prefecture was the first to be affected. He was directly demoted by 3 ranks by Luchingdi. This was only temporary. If it was confirmed that Prince Jean had met with misfortune, he would definitely become bald. If other things were found, such as the salt policy, such as the assassination of Prince Jean, his entire family would be investigated. Other people, other than those who didn't write memorials to ask for punishment, were all demoted by 1 or 2 ranks. In the end, Governor Sun's family was the biggest. Even the military power was temporarily handed over to his hands. The expression of the governor of the Kaming prefecture, who was handed over his military power, was brilliant beyond compare. Governor Su was his old rival. The two of them had been fighting for more than a day or 2. Governor Su did not reveal his strength, but the governor of the Kaming prefecture never dared to look down on him. He had thought that he might lose in some matters, but he didn't expect that this loss was too ruthless. He might not be able to climb up again. Not only that, he had now fallen under the other party's command. The memorials to ask for punishment did not belong to this old dog Su. In other people's memorials to ask for punishment, he overstepped his authority and did things that were against the rules and would even be punished. Because it was to rescue Prince Jean, it was not meritorious. Governor Darren must be very pleased with himself. The governor of the Kaming prefecture. "Oh, wrong," the former governor said while gnashing his teeth. "Pleased? What is there to be pleased with? Whether Prince Jean is alive or dead is still unknown. We should do our best to find Prince Jean." Governor Su's face was stern. At this time, we must not be unable to distinguish the priority. These words seemed to be reminding the other party what was the most important thing at the moment. The anger in the former governor's heart was even more intense. Even if this old dog ridiculed him, it was still better than seeing his hypocritical face. But that worry and fear was indeed even more intense. The more he wanted Prince Jin's life before, the more he hoped that the other party was still safe and sound at this time. The Kaming prefecture dispatched 5,000 prefecture soldiers and followed the canal downwards. This was Governor Su's order to expand the scope of the search. Compared to other people, Governor Su's heart was not that calm. It was only because he sensed that Prince Jean was not ordinary. He was not sure if this was just a play arranged by Prince Jean. He did not want Li Hongyuan to die in the Kaming prefecture, but it did not mean that he wanted Li Hongyuan to live. Forcing Li Hongyuan away was within his plan. Making a move on the canal was also a part of the plan. However, colluding with the officials and bandits was not in his plan. When he did things, he always wanted to ensure a 100% success rate. The water bandits were easy to use, but they were not trusted by him. Moreover, there was also the risk of being caught. But the problem was, his people did not have time to make a move. Not only that, they had completely lost track of him. Was he already dead? Or was he caught? The former was still okay, but if it was the latter, with such a scope of search, it was only a matter of time before they were found. However, it was almost 2 days before Li Hongyuan rested. To a certain extent, the life and death of this group of fake water bandits, who were taken care of by clan head Pei, completely depended on Li Hongyuan's thoughts. Of course, Li Hongyuan's thoughts were completely in the hands of Jingwan. Would Jingwan let these hundreds of men, women, old and young die? If they were real water bandits who committed crimes, or because they had committed a serious crime and had nowhere to go, they were gathered here by clan head Pei. Then, even if they did not want their lives, Jingwan would let them go to the place where they should go. For example, prison or a bitter and cold place. The problem now was they did not have either of these. Clan head Pei wanted to say something to Li Hongyuan. However, Li Hongyuan was now impervious to oil and salt. Even because the other party was too noisy, he once let the guards put a knife on his neck. Clan head Pei clearly felt that if he said another word, Li Hongyuan would really kill him without hesitation. Speaking of which, he had always been secretive about coming here. If he really died here, it would be equivalent to dying in vain. The Pei family would not even be able to find his corpse. Before clan head Pei could retreat, the people of the water bandits had already rushed out. Even if the guards drew their swords and threatened them, they would not retreat a single step. Clan leader Pei hurriedly tried to dissuade him. His face was filled with helplessness. "Your Highness, it's all my fault this time. Please be magnanimous and let them off this time. They're all people with hard lives, and they're kind-hearted. If you have to do something to appease your anger, you can do it to me. I won't complain at all." There was a hint of pleading in his voice. The water bandits looked at Clan head Pei with red eyes. They were all very touched. Then, they looked at Li Hongyuan with hatred, looking like they would fight to the end. Speaking of which, this person, if he could do what Clan head Pei did, he could be considered a big winner, right? Li Hongyuan looked at Clan head Pei with a faint smile. He did not care about this group of unruly people at all. Jingwan was also not frightened by this hostile situation. She saw that the situation was getting more and more tense, as if it was about to explode at any moment. Jingwan reached out and patted Li Hongyuan's arm. She said somewhat helplessly, "Your Highness, that's enough. Fighting is fighting, don't really kill people." She sounded like she was coaxing a child who was throwing a tantrum. Li Hongyuan was immediately unhappy. He said somewhat angrily, "Who's fighting?" Jingwan looked at him with a faint smile. "Wasn't it obvious? Wasn't it obvious?" Li Hongyuan shot to his feet. His expression was very ugly. He glared at Jingwan as if he wanted to swallow her alive. After a moment, he did not say anything and left in a huff. Jingwan sighed helplessly and waved her hand. "You can all leave first. I want to have a few words with old Master Pei." The group of guards naturally had no objections, and the people of the water stronghold left one after another after receiving the signal from Chief Pei. Jingwan personally poured a cup of tea for Clan head Pei. She slowly said, "Old Master Pei, don't blame His Highness. He has a knot in his heart. He more or less has some resentment in his heart. He was raised by noble consort Su since he was born. Although noble consort Su treats him like her own son, it is said that there is no familial affection in the imperial family. Furthermore, noble consort Su has a son. Who knows what she is thinking in her heart? Perhaps she is just using His Highness to consolidate his favor and fight for her son. Although His Majesty dotes on him, His Majesty is His Majesty first, and His Majesty is His Majesty's father. The other princes did not have an external family or a biological mother. Even if some of them did not have either, they were not favored by His Majesty. They were invisible in the eyes of others and did not pose a threat. Relatively speaking, they were actually more free. His Highness's favor was the most enviable, but he had no one to back him up. Although he seemed to have unlimited glory on the surface, he was actually the one who had the most difficult life out of all the princes. Now that he was an adult, his temperament had become more tenacious. However, he must have had some dreams when he was young, but they were never realized. Now in the depths of his heart, there might be a desire. In fact, coming here this time was the best proof. Because when he first received the news, the prince seemed to have sensed something. He appeared calm, but as the person who slept next to him, she could feel the anxiety and impatience in his heart. To be honest, His Highness does not lack people who can help him now. What he lacks is family who are sincere to him. I don't know why old Mr. Pei would invite His Highness in such a special way. It's purely for his sake. He's your grandson by blood, your relative. You're only doing this because you can't meet him openly. I believe that His Highness's attitude towards you will change sooner or later. However, if it's for other reasons, it's best that old Mr. Pei keep your mouth shut. His Highness is especially sensitive and repulsed by such things. That's all I have to say. I will take my leave now." After Jingwan finished speaking, she left without waiting for a response. Clan leader Pei did not react. He sat there in a daze. He basically believed Jin Qinhuang Fei's words. However, he wasn't sure if it was this granddaughter-in-law who felt sorry for her husband and told him, or if it was the two of them who colluded to play the emotional card and gain more benefits. In his opinion, the latter was more likely. After all, this couple had only been married for slightly more than 2 months. His grandson did not look like a kind person. How could he reveal his past so easily? Furthermore, in clan leader Pei's eyes, they were affectionate while traveling with his wife. In his eyes, this was not true love. It was just a cover-up. However, no matter what, one thing was certain. In order to achieve their goal, they had to show sincerity in any aspect. When they returned to their temporary lodging, Jingwan saw Li Hongyuan leaning against a chair and flipping through a book in boredom. There was no trace of anger on his face. When he sensed Jingwan coming in, he did not even lift his eyelids. "What did Wan say about your husband in front of outsiders?" Jingwan walked over and took the book from his hand. She looked at him with a hint of ridicule. "Your Highness, your acting skills are getting better and better. Is that so?" Wan is also getting impatient. "Keep up the good work." Jingwan chuckled and stopped talking. There was no point in talking about this. Besides, the possibility of her losing was too high. She roughly repeated what she had said just now. "Am I really that bad? Your husband has always been willful in the open and in the dark. It's not that easy to make me suffer." Yes. "Who do you think you are, Your Highness? Only you can make others suffer. Tell me, what do you think clan leader Pei will think?" "Damn it. If you want a real family, don't count on him. No matter what, I'm important to him, and he's useless to me. I can't let him take the initiative. If I don't make him bleed, he can forget about getting any benefits from me. Then, let him settle everything after this. Of course. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653562. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 296. It was obvious that this place would be found sooner or later. To cover up Li Hongyuan's intentional disappearance and to protect the people of the water stronghold, they needed a reasonable explanation. This explanation was not something that could be settled with just a few words. There were many things that needed to be arranged. If they didn't hurry, it would be too late. This was clearly a matter between both parties. After all, if they couldn't cover it up, it would be extremely disadvantageous for both parties. Now that Li Hongyuan confidently handed over everything to clan leader Pei, the other party had no choice but to take over. Who let the one who needed to get closer to him, and not Li Hongyuan? Li Hongyuan didn't come forward. The follow-up matters were all handed over to Jingwan. Jingwan didn't say anything. At this time, her own husband was acting tsundere. Naturally, she would follow through to the end. However, Jingwan didn't expose the point that someone's heart was really tsundere. Of course, it wasn't because of clan leader Pei. To be specific, it was probably because someone wanted to be lazy. The result of Jingwan's discussion with clan leader Pei was that Jin Qinhuang was attacked. Under the protection of the guards, he entered the mountains. The attackers chased him relentlessly for 2 days. When everyone was exhausted and heavily injured, they met the people of the water stronghold. Thus, what should be covered up was covered up, and what should be covered up was covered up. It was just that the details of the arrangements were quite difficult. However, Jingwan then found that she thought too much. What should be arranged? Clan leader Pei had already arranged. Obviously, he had already thought of this. In the discussion just now, he gave what he thought was a relatively reasonable arrangement. Because it was similar to what Jingwan thought, naturally, there was no reason to disagree. For example, the location of the attack had been moved 10 miles downwards, and the boat that was submerged in the water had been moved downwards. Jingwan didn't want to ask him how he did it, but this section of the canal had been sealed, and no one was allowed to pass through. It should be easier to operate than expected. Another example, after entering the mountains, on the escape route, there would be traces of fighting from time to time. There were also many corpses along the way. What we need to deal with now is the things that His Highness and Her Highness brought along, as well as the people who followed them. Clan Head Pei said calmly. Jingwan didn't look too good. Corpse. Where did this corpse come from? It couldn't be a coincidence. Obviously, Patriarch Pei treated human life like grass. There are many birds and beasts in the mountains. All you need to do is leave some bloodstains, rags, and the like. Old Master Pei. Do you really have to go to this extent? But Clan Head Pei didn't care. This old man knows that Princess Consort is kind-hearted, but a forgery has to be realistic. There are many smart people. Since there were people who wanted His Highness' life, then they wouldn't let go of any clues. You should know that His Highness brought many people with him, and they were all quite skilled. To be able to force so many people to retreat, the other party must have a large number of people. With so many people lost in the mountains, how could a few bloodstains and cloth make up for it? However, esteemed Wang Fei can be at ease. In the end, it's just a fake. There aren't as many corpses as you think. There definitely wouldn't be fewer corpses. Jingwan's expression didn't improve. Her face was cold. Since Old Master Pei has already thought it through, then there's nothing more to say. Most of the people by His Highness' side will be sent away, but they can't be too far away from His Highness. I'm sure Old Master Pei has already prepared a place for them to stay. In addition, His Highness is precious and can enjoy himself. Now that we have to sink these things with the ship, even if we salvage them later, I'm afraid that some of them can't be used. Our Pei family will compensate His Highness for all his losses. We just have to inconvenience His Highness for a while. That's great. Jingwan flicked her sleeves and left. Esteemed Wang Fei. Clan Head Pei called out to her. Is there anything else? Jingwan didn't turn around. She just tilted her head slightly. She didn't even call out to him. Her disapproval of Clan Head Pei's actions couldn't be more obvious. Clan Head Pei acted as if he didn't see her displeasure and continued to speak in a neither fast nor slow manner. Those who stayed behind, after all, fought a hard battle to protect His Highness and Her Highness from being injured. How could they not be injured at all? Esteemed Wang Fei, don't you think so? Everything was done for His Highness' sake. Esteemed Wang Fei, please reconsider. Jingwan left with a dark expression. She didn't know how many lives had been lost because of her. Now under her watch, she had to watch them deliberately injure a perfectly fine person. A cold could be fatal. Moreover, it was already May. Wounds could easily become infected. Who knew if there would be serious consequences? Clan Head Pei didn't comment on Jingwan's anger. He picked up his teacup and took a sip. Then he placed the teacup in front of his eyes and studied it carefully, as if he was looking at a treasure. Too soft-hearted. In some aspects, he had to admit that his grandson's Wang Fei was very good. However, in other aspects, she was still lacking. In the current situation, she couldn't be a virtuous wife. She was too benevolent and wasn't suitable to be the mother of the country. So it's time to change? Looking at Jingwan's cold expression, Li Honyuan knew that the old man must have done something to make her not angry anymore. Wan, don't be angry. I'll avenge you. You don't know anything, and you're already thinking of revenge? Maybe he didn't do anything wrong. Jingwan sneered. My Wan is unhappy, so it's his fault. Moreover, do I need a reason to punish someone? He said it as if it was a matter of course. Jingwan narrowed her eyes slightly as she looked at Li Honyuan. Suddenly, she realized that this man was indeed Clan Head Pei's grandson. He was very conceited and self-centered. Clan Head Pei was relatively introverted, while Li Honyuan was more arrogant and flamboyant. In addition, she was also the center of this man's heart. Moreover, she occupied a more important position. Even if she had to do something that was inherently unpleasant, she wouldn't be angry at him because of their closeness. Did this mean that she finally found the origin of Li Hongyuan's ego? Jingwan and Li Honyuan briefly explained the outcome of their discussion. Li Honyuan naturally knew why Jingwan was upset. In fact, this was basically within his expectations. However, there were some things that didn't need to be said out loud. Otherwise, Wan would only feel more uncomfortable. She was lacking in these aspects and was no match for that old man. As long as she didn't harden her heart, she would never be a match for this kind of person. Li Hongyuan also knew that she wouldn't end up like this and would always be a loser. But so what? He could deal with these people. Those who bullied his wife naturally had to pay a heavy price. Since things have already come to this, don't think too much. Jingwan pursed her lips. She knew that this was the only way, but her heart couldn't calm down in a short period of time. As for the matter of self-injury, Wang Fei, it's not good. You Darren and the others. Qing Ju hurriedly rushed in. It should be known that when Qing Ju followed Jingwan into Jin Wangfu, she restrained herself as much as possible. She was afraid that she would be rash and lose face for her family's young lady. To be so anxious at this time, it could be seen that it wasn't a small matter. What happened? Jingwan quickly asked. You Darren and the bodyguard Dage and the others got into a fight. Injured. Jingwan was startled at first. How could they get into a fight without any reason? Not to mention Yu Zhongqing, Li Hongyuan's bodyguards, which one of them wasn't a person with self-restraint. On second thought, something wasn't right. What about old Mr. Pei? Is he also present? Thinking of this possibility, Jingwan's expression became unusually ugly. She couldn't make a decision on her own, and was even worried that she would affect a Yuan's decision. So she acted on her own initiative and directly looked for the people below. Yu Zhongqing was here to protect Jin Wangfu. As for the other bodyguards, to them, their lives weren't their own. If their master needed it, don't mention deliberately getting injured. Even if they had to risk their lives, they wouldn't blink an eye. That old thing was sure of this point, so he dared to swagger in to look for people after she left. Based on the basic respect that the younger generation had for their elders, at this moment, it was completely snuffed out. Jingwan hurriedly went out. Li Hongyuan didn't stop her and unhurriedly got up. He also straightened his clothes that didn't have any wrinkles, and then lifted his feet to go out. Jingwan's speed was very fast. Her original intention was to stop Yu Zhongqing and the others, but when she arrived, it was too late. The scuffle was already over. That's right, it was a scuffle, the kind where the attack wasn't on guard. After all, only a real fight could create realistic wounds. More than a dozen people, because the clothes they wore were darker in color, but because of the blood stains, in addition to the large gashes that were cut open by the blade, it looked very obvious. Jingwan covered her eyes and couldn't say any words of reprimand, because it wasn't their fault at all. In their view, it was natural to do this. Qingju, go and take out the best wound medicine. You all quickly go and treat the wounds. Wang Fei Nyang, in this water stronghold, taking out the best wound medicine is unrealistic. Pei Clan had stroked his beard as he spoke. That's enough. The wounds from a few days ago showed no signs of improvement. That's unrealistic. Jingwan said coldly. And all of you, have you forgotten who your master is? You do whatever an outsider tells you to do? The guards were stunned. Indeed, no matter what happened in the end, it was up to their master to decide. They shouldn't have followed Yu Zhongqing's decision just because they thought it was right. They looked at each other and knelt down on one knee. Please punish us, mistress. I'll remember this first. After this mission is over, I'll punish him when we return to the capital. However, I hope that this will be the last time, Jingwan said firmly. Yes. Pei Clan had looked on from the side, but he was very dissatisfied. How could a woman reprimand her husband's guards? This wasn't as simple as simply overstepping. Wang Fei Nyang, Jingwan's cold eyes swept over. This Wang Fei is speaking. You're just a commoner. How dare you interrupt? Is this the etiquette of your big family? Is this the seniority of your big family? I call you old mister because you're an elder. Don't take advantage of your seniority to point fingers at this Wang Fei. Pei Clan head was choked by Jingwan's words. He had always been a person who wouldn't change his expression even if a mountain collapsed in front of him. But at this moment, he couldn't keep his face straight. Although what she said was the truth, and although Pei Shi's situation was unstable, no one had ever dared to say such things to him. Jiangnan's 4 counties and 20 prefectures. Even the governor and the inspector general had to be polite to him. Now that he was thrown to the ground and stepped on by a little girl who was his grandchild, it would be strange if he remained indifferent. However, he couldn't find the words to refute. In terms of status, she was a superior Wang Fei. He was, indeed, just a commoner. This was what he hated the most. In terms of seniority, he wasn't her elder. Even if he was Jin Qinhuang's maternal grandfather, there was no relationship between them in name. So what if she didn't respect him? It was true that Qi Yuan had a tradition of respecting the elderly, but this wasn't a reason to lecture at Qin Fei. Li Hongyuan looked on with interest. What was it? His wife's appearance, when she showed her might, was really attractive. However, his wife had always had a good temper. It was rare to see someone who could anger her to this extent. This Pei clan head was probably the first, and he needed to remember this. As for why his wife had angered his grandfather, it had nothing to do with him at all. Li Hongyuan stepped forward and stroked Jingwan's back to comfort her. Don't worry, I have people who are proficient in medicine. It's just an external injury. It won't cause any serious consequences. Obviously, with the previous years of indirect understanding and daily contact after marriage, Li Hongyuan had a good grasp of Jingwan's mentality. Jingwan slightly relaxed and nodded. There are some things that I need to arrange. Right now, she didn't want to see this Pei clan head at all. Go ahead. Li Hongyuan agreed. It's okay to spoil this woman a little, but if you spoil her too much, she will become arrogant. Your Highness, what does my pleasure have to do with outsiders? Li Hongyuan casually interrupted him. The princess consort hopes that my family will treat me with sincerity. That's why she humbles herself and respects you. Don't tell me you think that your so-called status as the Pei clan head is enough for her to talk to you. I've seen plenty of self-righteous people. What I enjoy is her sincerity. I can't bear to spoil her mood, so I didn't say anything. Don't tell me you think that my silence means that I've acquiesced. I may have some expectations for family relations, but you're a person who prioritizes benefits and wants to make use of me. Do you expect me to obediently come knocking on your door? Who's more stupid than the other? Things have been arranged. Get as far away as you can. If you make her unhappy again, don't blame me for making the entire Pei clan unhappy. Li Hongyuan's words didn't arouse much of a reaction from Pei clan head. Your Highness's importance to the princess consort is really beyond my expectations. His words were a little ironic. In his opinion, this was still an act, and the goal was always the same. However, since some words were exposed, it was also good. Pei clan had didn't intend to use the so-called family relations to achieve his goal. He always believed that there were no eternal enemies or friends, only eternal interests. However, Your Highness did a good job of burning the bridge after crossing the river. Based on your care for the princess consort, you certainly wouldn't order people to hurt themselves. This old man played the villain and helped Your Highness solve it. So what? Do you expect me to be grateful? https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653565. HTML. Click here to report an error. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken.com Mobile Edition. Chapter 297. So what? You still expect Ben Wang to be grateful? For people like Li Hongyuan, even if you gave him everything he wanted, he might not say a word of thanks. Wang Ye is thinking too much. Lao Fu just wanted to say that if Wang Ye has something that is inconvenient for you to do, Lao Fu can do it for you. The meaning of these words could not be more obvious. Just like how Li Hongyuan pointed out that the other party was using him, he no longer hid his true purpose. Li Hongyuan sneered. It was obvious that he was ridiculing him. Without saying anything, he turned and left. Pei clan head could not help but frown. He did not quite understand Li Hongyuan's meaning. It did not seem to be a simple distrust. Li Hongyuan had said before whether or not he was used by the Pei clan. First look at his mood. Then look at the Pei clan's sincerity. His mood right now could not be said to be bad, but it was not good for this Pei clan head. As for sincerity, was it just based on one sentence? Moreover, did Li Hongyuan need him to do it for him? Completely not. Pei clan head did not understand for the time being, but he did not make a fuss about it. He was very clear that 100 words were not as good as a single action. Moreover, he only said one sentence. Jin Wangya's purpose for this trip to Jiangnan. He was also very clear. Thus, to let him properly experience Pei clan's ability, he should not be indifferent. Pei clan had arranged the follow-up matters and did not ask any more questions. He did not leave. After all, the canal was now sealed and could not be passed through. He could not leave through the mountains. That kind of crossing over the mountains. Was it something that an old man like him, who lived like a prince, could bear? He only changed his attire and hid in the water stronghold, becoming an unremarkable member of the water stronghold. Other than the dozen or so injured guards, including Yu Zhongqing, the rest were all hidden according to the original plan. Needless to say, those who were originally in the dark were all hidden, and those who were in the open were all hidden. However, in this way, it was still a little troublesome. After all, there were too many people. If there were too many people missing, they would have to replenish from other places. This replenishment could be planted by spies, and it would be troublesome to clean up the spies. Jingwan's 6 maids were divided into 3 groups, and 2 groups were taken away by the others. Jingwan's wet nurse stayed, and Nanny Gong also left together. According to Li Hongyuan, he wanted Nanny Gong to stay and take care of Jingwan. However, Jingwan's wet nurse's health was far inferior to Nanny Gong's. If she was not careful, she might lose her life. In addition, Nanny Gong's wet nurse was also packed up. In this way, it was more reasonable to scatter the people in the process of hunting. After that, they would find a suitable opportunity to gather the people. The people who were hidden were naturally the dead people. This section of the river stretched for dozens of miles. At least, Jingwan did not know how large the range of the mountains that stretched to both sides of the river was. It was also not a small project to move all the valuables and then ship them out of the sunken ship. They also had to pray that they would not bump into the soldiers outside. However, this had nothing to do with Li Hongyuan. The luxurious things were gone, and they were all changed into plain clothes. If it were not for the fact that the clothes inside were not changed, Li Hongyuan's face would be as black as the bottom of a pot. Of course, this had nothing to do with him. It was mainly because of Jingwan. He was afraid that if he was not careful, Jingwan's skin would be worn out by the rough linen clothes. Jingwan pulled back her sleeves. She looked at Li Hongyuan speechlessly and ignored him. The people who found them came faster than expected. They did not come in from the river, but came out from the mountains. They were led by the water bandits. Not only that, the leader was directly carried on someone's back. However, when she saw that person, Jingwan could not help but feel her heart tighten. It was very unexpected. Li Hongyuan's face was quite ugly. He reached out and grabbed the other person's neck without hesitation. As long as he used more strength, he could really break it. Yuan, don't. Jingwan seemed to be prepared. She hurried forward and grabbed his hand. Li Hongyuan looked coldly at Jingwan. He was even angrier. To be able to make Li Hongyuan have such a big reaction, it was likely that he would appear here. Obviously, other than Sun Yilin, there was no other candidate. Originally, it was better not to meet him. However, his appearance did not seem to be too surprising. As far as Li Hongyuan was concerned, he did not ask him to bring his wife away from anyone. At this time, Sun Yilin had already sunk into a semi-conscious state and looked very terrible. However, he was still mumbling something in his sleep. However, the sensitive people could easily guess. Miss Luo. It was no wonder Li Hongyuan said that he had lost control. Jingwan pulled him. Yuan, if he loses his life like this, I should really remember him for a lifetime. It is not because of anything else, but because of the guilt. You understand. Li Hongyuan's expression was abnormally frightening. The evil aura around him was really like the most ferocious beast that chose to devour people. The surrounding people were all trembling. Even those who were further away, such as Yu Zhongqing, clan leader Pei, and the others, were all shocked. Only Jingwan did not budge an inch. Yuan. There was a hint of pleading in her voice. She knew the anger in his heart. Because if their positions were switched, if Sun Yilin was replaced by another woman, the anger in her heart would also be monstrous. However, in reality, this assumption was not likely to be true. She believed that if she wanted to kill a love rival, he would be more likely to clap his hands and cheer. But in the end, she was different from him. It was not that she did not care, nor was she able to tolerate her other half being coveted by others. In the end, Li Hongyuan could ignore human life, but she could not. What's more, Sun Yilin was in this state because of her. Even if no one asked him to do so, everything was brought upon by him. However, there were only a few people in the world who could remain unmoved. Feelings that she could not and would not accept naturally could not be trampled on. When the other party did not do anything wrong to her or to anyone else, how could she be harsh and ignore the other party's life? Li Hongyuan shook off Sun Yilin and turned to leave. No one dared to come within one zhang of him. Jingwan rubbed her temples with a headache. This time, it would not be easy to coax him and appease him. Moreover, if she did not chase after him now, his anger would only increase. However, if she did not make arrangements for the person who had angered Li Hongyuan to this extent, no one would care about him. Take young master's son away. Treat him carefully and familiarize him. Do not neglect him. Other than Li Hongyuan, Jingwan was the boss. Naturally, no one would refute her words. In any case, even if it was Wang Ye's anger, there was still her, the Wang Fei. They knew what kind of temperament Jingwan had. She would not vent her anger on them and vent her anger on them. Sun Yilin just happened to open his eyes at this time. She did not know if it was because he saw Jingwan, but he suddenly seemed to be completely awake. He grabbed Jingwan's arm. Miss Luo, I'm not dreaming, am I? The worry and apprehension in his eyes were not the least bit fake. The group of soldiers and generals who had originally followed Sun Yilin to search for the person wished that they were deaf and blind. That was, from the time they left Chongzhou Prefecture until now. In these few days, the provincial governor had not closed his eyes and had not eaten anything. After confirming that Jean Wanya's accident had nothing to do with those 2 or 3 waves of water bandits, he did not participate in the suppression of the bandits. He continued to search along the canal. Every place that could be entered into the mountains was not let go. Every place was carefully inspected by experienced people in an attempt to find clues. Speaking of which, going from the canal to the mountains, under normal circumstances, no one would do this kind of thing. Therefore, every time he was disappointed, he would become more and more anxious. His eyes were bloodshot. He had already reached his limit, but he still persisted and refused to close his eyes. Originally, she thought that he really had taboo feelings towards Jean Wanya. Otherwise, he was the Gongzi of Ding Guogong Fu, who was deeply favored by the emperor. He clearly had a boundless future, but he was sent away at a marriageable age. No matter how she looked at it, it did not seem right. If it was because of Jean Wanya. Jean Wanya was married and went away. It seemed to make sense. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that this was the case. Looking at it now, well, the one who was really missed was not Jean Wanya, but Jean Qin Wang Fei. The person he admired was married and became a woman. It was no wonder that he did not want to stay there sadly. Stop thinking about Jean Wanya's rage just now. She felt that she could not protect her little life. It's me, you're not dreaming. However, shouldn't Sun Gongzi call me Jean Qin Wang Fei? Jingwan chuckled, but there was no smile in her eyes. She gently brushed away his hand. Sun Gongzi has really worked hard to find Wanya. Please rest well. Wanya is protected by the heavens and is fine. Sun Yilin only felt a burning pain in his lungs. He understood Jingwan's meaning. Her words were good for everyone. His current words and actions were already impolite, but he still could not bear it. The pain in his eyes almost overflowed, but he could only forcibly hold it back. It's good that you're fine, it's good that you're fine. After saying this, Sun Yilin seemed to have been drained of all his strength. His body went soft, his eyes closed, and he completely fainted. Jingwan was also shocked and quickly had people carry him into the room. After confirming that Sun Yilin's life was not in danger, he was just overly tired and had not eaten for many days. In addition, he had been poisoned by the snake venom. Now that the string was stretched taut, he completely collapsed. Jingwan breathed a sigh of relief. However, she was indeed fine. However, she reckoned that everyone would not be fine. Jingwan felt even more of a headache. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653566. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Exempt from registration. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bikuga mobile reading website, ambicken.com. Chapter 298. Although it was a headache, she still had to face it. Of course, Jingwan had never thought of pretending to be an ostrich and not going to see him. Firstly, the consequences would be more serious. Secondly, in Jingwan's philosophy, if there was a problem, it must be solved. Dragging it out or something else was absolutely not desirable. Moreover, that was her other half. Seeing him uncomfortable, Jingwan was also unable to be happy. As for those who found them, how to explain it to them? She didn't need to come forward. However, when Jingwan returned, Li Honyuan was not in the room. Looking at it this way, his anger was really not ordinary. After asking for a while, no one knew where he went. The guards that were left behind were more or less injured. However, this was not the reason why they were resting. The reason why no one followed was completely because someone did not let them. That appearance of wanting to eat people was really not something that ordinary people could bear. Furthermore, they had always been absolutely obedient to the orders of the masses. At this time, they could only stand in front of Jingwan with their hands hanging down. However, it was not their responsibility. Not being able to protect their master's side was their fault. Don't blame you. Send people to look around. Jingwan rubbed her swollen temples. Jingwan and the others were not in a hurry. However, those people who had just found them, upon hearing that Jin Qinhuang was missing, almost jumped up. It must be known that because of these few days, facing the high pressure from above, they were simply throwing their lives away. They couldn't eat or sleep well. Their hair was falling out in clumps. Now that they finally saw the person, their suspended hearts finally returned to their original position. Then they made such a scene. This heart really couldn't bear it. Even if their breathing was not even steady, they were still in a hurry to find the person. Because they were not familiar with the water stronghold, each and every one of them were like headless flies. The people of the water stronghold were baffled. What were they doing? Then the water stronghold was turned upside down, but they still didn't see the person. When they reported to Jingwan, Jingwan was extremely speechless. The people of the water stronghold are more familiar than you. There are hundreds of people. There must be someone who saw the whereabouts of Wangya. Don't you know how to open your mouth and ask? You're just randomly looking around like that? Everyone's expressions were rather interesting. They had been too anxious and had completely forgotten. At this moment, they were so ashamed that they wanted to crawl into a hole and hide their faces. Sure enough, after casually asking around, he found out Li Hongyuan's whereabouts. He had left the water stockade and entered the mountains. Because of this, they couldn't sit still and were in a hurry to search. They came from the mountain ridge. Although they didn't go very deep and basically walked to the shortest route to the water stronghold, they still deeply felt the danger inside. On the other hand, Jingwan was very calm. Within a certain range of the water stockade, there definitely wouldn't be anything too dangerous. Although she hadn't seen Li Hongyuan's skills, she had seen him kill people, and he even had the battle record of fighting a tiger alone. So, how could he be weak? Ordinary dangers couldn't do anything to him. Jingwan carefully inquired about the situation in that direction and found out that it was actually a valley, about 2 miles long. Not far from the end, there was a lake that was neither big nor small. Under normal circumstances, there would be some small animals roaming around. Because the water bandits often hunted, there were basically no large birds or beasts within 5 miles. Jingwan thanked her, and then found 2 people to lead the way. Together, they went into the mountains to search for Wangya. According to their intentions, they didn't want Jingwan to go. Jingwan only had one sentence. Do you have the confidence to find Wangya and bring him back? All right, they all understood Jingwan's meaning. Finding him wasn't the main point, but after finding him, getting him back was the main point. They didn't dare to say a word. How could they get him back? Moreover, people with discerning eyes knew that Wangya was jealous. If Wang Fei didn't personally go, if they went forward, they would definitely be punished. Jingwan wasn't wearing cumbersome, magnificent clothes now. She was dressed in cloth and was very capable. It was only going up the mountain, not climbing a cliff. It was a piece of cake. The troops split into 2. The majority of the people first went to look for Li Hongyuan, while the rest followed behind to protect Jingwan. They thought that the people behind would be very slow. Wang Fei, after all, was precious and delicate. Walking in the mountain forest, how could she be fast? Perhaps she would be out of breath after walking a few more steps. As a result, they soon found that they were thinking too much. Jin Qinhuang's speed wasn't much slower. Jin Qinhuang might not have walked along the valley, but went up the mountain from both sides. This assumption didn't happen. Soon, news came from the front that the person had been found. He was by the lake, but they didn't dare to alarm him. The vegetation in the valley was relatively short. The closer it was to the lake, the taller the trees were. But at most, they were only about a zhang tall, far from the height of towering giant trees. Through the gaps between the trees, Jingwan could faintly see Li Hongyuan's figure. He was sitting on a rock by the lake with one leg bent, inexplicably feeling a little bleak. Jingwan's heart subconsciously clenched, and her footsteps involuntarily quickened. The other people consciously stopped and scattered around to ensure that they couldn't see or hear, and to isolate themselves from any danger. Li Hongyuan couldn't be more familiar with Jingwan's footsteps, but he still sat there motionless. However, only he knew the emotions flashing in his eyes, as well as the sinister and calculating. In fact, he was very clear that whether it was Sun Yilin or Chen Zhengmin, they couldn't die. At least, they couldn't die in his hands. There was originally no estrangement between him and Jingwan. If he killed them, it would instead breed estrangement. Perhaps it wouldn't be irreconcilable, but Jingwan's heart would definitely have a knot. Moreover, as Jingwan herself said, she would probably remember it for a lifetime. How could he allow it? In this way, the conflict would only deepen and develop to the point where it could get out of hand. This was definitely not what he wanted to see. Who made him unhappy? If he couldn't kill them, he would return it back 10 times, 100 times. It must be said that Li Hongyuan was currently the craziest, but also the most rational. A madman wasn't scary, a rational person wasn't scary, but a rational madman could be quite scary. Jingwan approached and reached out to put her hand on his shoulder. Li Hongyuan was still indifferent. Are you still angry? Jingwan was actually a little helpless. She knew what he was concerned about, but this problem couldn't be solved at the moment. It was useless to say anything. She reached out and hugged him from behind. She leaned her cheek against the side of his head. I'm sorry. Li Hongyuan was stunned. Why? The one who had the least reason to apologize was her. It couldn't be for Sun Yilin. If that were the case, he would really kill someone. Would Wan be so stupid? As a wife, isn't it my fault that I can't give my husband 100% sense of security? To be honest, Li Hongyuan didn't understand the word sense of security very well. At most, he could make a rough guess based on the meaning of the word. If he understood it completely, he would probably explode. It has nothing to do with you, Wan Wan. I shouldn't take my anger out on you. The one who should be apologizing is me. But Wan Wan, I can't control myself. I won't allow anyone to spy on you. Even if I know that they will never take you away from me, I won't allow it. Yes, I know. In fact, as a man of traditional etiquette, 9 out of 10 men wouldn't be able to tolerate such things. They might even take their anger out on women because of this. They wouldn't trust their daughters and would do something that was very despicable. After that, it would be too late to regret it. They would look like they were in so much pain that they wished they were dead. Just like Lu Cheng Emperor, it was actually very disgusting. Li Hongyuan held her hand. Jingwan stepped on the stone and walked in front of him, snuggling into his arms. Li Hongyuan deliberately controlled himself and didn't let Jingwan notice the look in his eyes. Although he couldn't see it himself, he knew very well that the look in his eyes at this moment was very scary. After staying in silence for a while, Jingwan's attention shifted slightly from him. The scenery here is not bad. Li Hongyuan glanced at it. Yes. He responded indifferently. No matter how beautiful the scenery was, it couldn't hide his dark heart. It wasn't early to begin with. At this time, the sky had formed a beautiful fiery cloud. It was reflected in the back lake. It looked particularly beautiful. Looking at this scenery, Jingwan forgot her worries for a moment. She was so quiet, and occasionally said a few words. Time passed quietly, and the sky was getting darker and darker. Yuan, let's go back. Let's go back. Seeing that the two of them were moving, the people around them slowly gathered. The two of them walked at the front hand in hand. The others kept a distance of more than 10 feet behind them. When they returned to the water stronghold, the lights were already lit. Seeing them return, everyone was very happy. In the evening, Li Hongyuan saw the generals of this trip and said a few words of encouragement. Because they had already heard of Li Hongyuan's actions as the king of hell, this time they were in fear and trepidation, overwhelmed by the favor. Li Hongyuan didn't comment. He wasn't someone who would consider other people's feelings. Have you already informed your superiors? Yes, by tomorrow morning at the latest, they will come to pick you up and leave. It's been a few days. Have you found out who attacked this prince? There was some sweat on the general's forehead, replying to Wang Ye. This general is responsible for Governor Sun. Speaking to this point, he suddenly remembered that Sun Gongzi was still thinking about Jin Qinhuang Fei, causing Jin Qinhuang to become jealous. Now that he mentioned it, did he want to die or did he want to die? But he couldn't say half of what he wanted to say, so he had to bite the bullet and continue. To find the whereabouts of your highness. As for the other matters, this general doesn't know for the time being. Please forgive me, your highness. In reality, it wasn't that they didn't know, but that there was no progress. The colleagues who were in charge of this matter, as well as the various officials, were so worried that their hair had turned white. Fortunately, Jin Qinhuang's good fortune was profound and he was not injured. Otherwise, they really wouldn't be able to bear the emperor's anger. You may leave. Yes. That's it? The general who retreated let out a sigh of relief. A gust of wind blew, and he felt a chill on his back. It turned out that he was already drenched in sweat. At this time, Jingwan had already fallen asleep. Li Hongyuan looked at the light and was slightly lost in thought. Patriarch Pei requested an audience. Perhaps it was because he had nothing to do, but Li Hongyuan wanted to see him. Patriarch Pei gave a courtesy greeting. It's all because Jin Qinhuang is dissolute and beautiful, but he was originally an infatuated type. This is really unexpected, to the point that he had wronged himself. Everyone says that love is long, but the hero's breath is short. When it comes to Jin Qinhuang, it's hard to avoid disappointment. Disappointed in Ben Wang. The remnant of the previous dynasty must have satisfied Patriarch Pei. Patriarch Pei was startled. This old man doesn't know what your highness is talking about. Although he tried his best to conceal it, but the shock wasn't light. Scram. Patriarch Pei clenched his fists in his sleeves. Your highness is in a bad mood. So, this old man will take his leave first. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653568. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile reading website, ambicken.com. Chapter 299. Even if Qiyuan was destroyed, the throne would not be occupied by the remnants of the previous dynasty. And even more so, it would not be your Pei family's turn to be that regent. Aristocratic families that have been around for generations, aristocratic families without the support of power can only fool ordinary people. There's probably no one who is clearer than you, the patriarch of the Pei family, about how many people are eyeing the Pei family. If you want to act big in front of this prince, you should first weigh your own capabilities. Don't come to me if you have nothing to say. Think carefully before you come. If you don't, there is no need for the Pei family to exist. Hearing Li Hongyuan's voice behind him, clan leader Pei paused for a moment before he sped up. After he left the room, clan leader Pei no longer hid his feelings. His expression was uncertain. Even though Li Hongyuan's attitude was distant and cold, he was confident that he could achieve his goal in the end. Now that Li Hongyuan impatiently pointed out the advantage that he thought he had disappeared in an instant. Instead, he was being controlled tightly. Regardless of which dynasty it was, they hated the surviving members of the previous dynasty. Naturally, they would want to eliminate them completely, regardless of whether they were old, weak, women, or children. If the imperial court found out that the Pei family was hiding the descendants of the previous dynasty, they would definitely destroy the Pei family. Moreover, no other family would help them. No one would dare to interfere in the matter of exterminating the Pei family. Don't forget that the protection given by Emperor Taizu had a major prerequisite. In essence, the Pei clan was not favored by the Li royal clan. Let me ask you, it's already a change of dynasty. It's fine if you don't curry favor with me, the new emperor, but you still can't forget the previous dynasty. What is the meaning of this? Because the dynasty was not stable and there were too many killings in the early stages. If they attacked the Pei family at this time, the newly established dynasty would immediately be in chaos. In order to show mercy, they let the Pei family go. The clan leader of the Pei family at that time made such a decision because he knew the situation at that time. However, the clan leader of the Pei family at that time was loyal and righteous. Did he think about the other members of the Pei family? Moreover, how did he suppress the voices of the Pei family at that time? Could it be that all the Pei family members were of the same mind as him? As long as Emperor Taizu of the Qi Yuan promised a high position and generous salary, there would be people who would not hesitate even if they were expelled from the family. Then what exactly happened back then? This was also a mystery to Patriarch Pei. Li Hongyuan was right. Many people were eyeing the Pei family now, especially those in-laws. They put on a good face, but they wanted to peel off a layer of the Pei family skin. The simplest and most helpless thing was that the Pei family's dowry and betrothal gifts were far more than what they received. From any aspect, they couldn't give too little. If they were too little, it was one thing to be criticized, but the Pei family couldn't afford to lose face. It was still fine if they were from the side branches, but the closer they were to the main family, the more they couldn't save. Not only that, in the past, the Pei family usually only had connections with other clans through marriage. Ordinary nobles rarely had connections with them. Even if these nobles wanted to marry the Pei family's concubine's daughter, they had to give everything they had. It wasn't like now, where any Tom, Dick, or Harry dared to come knocking on their door. Of course, this was only Patriarch Pei's opinion. It wasn't that serious in nature. However, even if it was a Tom, Dick, or Harry, they weren't born with nothing. To put it bluntly, the Pei family, from top to bottom, were born with nothing. They were just ordinary people. No matter how many famous scholars there were, it couldn't change this fact. Just based on this point, they had no right to look down on others. However, it was a pity that clan leader Pei would never realize this. He was more concerned about Li Hongyuan now. How did he know about the descendants of the previous dynasty's imperial family? This could be considered the Pei family's biggest secret. Even in the Pei family, there were very few people who knew about it. They were all trustworthy people. Then, where did they go wrong? This kind of family extermination matter. Those who knew about it knew the severity of it. The possibility of it being accidentally found out was very small. In comparison, he was more inclined to believe that someone had leaked the secret, and that someone had done it in a very conscious state. Thinking about this, Patriarch Pei's face became colder. If he knew, however, this wasn't the main point now. The main point was how to deal with his grandson. According to the current situation, only he knew about this matter. If his father knew about it, he would have already made a move on the Pei family. He hid it, which meant that he had a motive. What he wanted was obvious at a glance. Now, he had to make a decision. He could only choose one of the two paths. In reality, after being exposed, there was no other choice. If he chose the descendants of the previous dynasty's imperial family, the Pei family would only have a dead end. His grandson became the only choice for the Pei family to rise again. In the face of life and death, in the face of future interests, Patriarch Pei's mind couldn't be clearer. However, at the same time, the Pei family had lost all initiative. If they had only wanted to help at 30% of their strength, he might have squeezed them into 120%. Patriarch Pei hated this feeling of being completely out of control and at the mercy of others. As for the person who had caused the Pei family to fall into this state, the only thing that comforted Patriarch Pei was that this grandson of his was very resourceful. The stronger he was, the greater the advantage he had in the fight for the throne. In the end, there would be fewer variables. However, although this kind of person would reduce the chances of those assisting him to perform, it would also reduce the danger that they faced. Patriarch Pei was very ambitious. Otherwise, he wouldn't have raised the descendants of the previous dynasty's imperial family. In the end, it would be very difficult to satisfy him. Moreover, he had a fatal weakness. He was also worried that Li Hongyuan would burn the bridge after crossing the river. Patriarch Pei was also very clear about this kind of thing. It would be a joke to have deep feelings for someone he had never met or interacted with. It was said that the kindness of birth was not as good as the kindness of raising. From what he knew, imperial concubine Su had done her best for this adopted son. He didn't need to miss his birth mother. As for these people who suddenly intervened, other than the thin blood relationship, they didn't have any feelings to speak of. It would be a joke if they really succeeded. No matter how he looked at it, the disadvantages outweighed the advantages. So what? Patriarch Pei stood in the cold wind and resolutely turned back. For this kind of thing, the sooner he expressed his opinion, the better. This time, even his attitude was much better. Li Hongyuan didn't reject him, and his sitting posture didn't change much. Your Highness, if there's a chance, how about I let you meet someone? Patriarch Pei smiled warmly. Li Hongyuan also guessed who he wanted to meet. This more or less meant that he was going to hand this person over to him. You raised him like your own son. You married and had children for him to continue the bloodline. Now, you're abandoning him just like that. You really are a qualified patriarch. Patriarch Pei's back was drenched in cold sweat. He didn't expect Li Hongyuan to know the other party's identity. One had to know that there were even fewer people who knew this, and they were all surnamed Pei. Could it be that he didn't mention it before because he wanted to test him again? Why was it that the more he interacted with this grandson, the more he felt that this grandson was unfathomable? Patriarch Pei rejoiced that he made a decisive choice. Patriarch Pei lowered his head and pursed his lips. Your Highness also said that this old man is a qualified patriarch. Yes, an unqualified father. This prince's wife hates this kind of person the most. Patriarch Pei's expression was exceptionally good. He wasn't sure if Li Hongyuan was speaking the truth, or if he was insinuating something with his words. As a woman, Your Highness is inevitably soft-hearted. However, as the patriarch of a clan, you bear the expectations of all the clan members. Usually it's best if everything is perfect, but when there's a conflict, you have to make a choice. Li Hongyuan nodded, as if he agreed with Patriarch Pei's words. It's obvious what the choice is between the entire clan and an outsider who's like a puppet. It's just as Your Highness said. In essence, it's a matter of choosing the greater of two benefits. For the first time, Patriarch Pei felt that talking to someone was so tiring. In the end, he really couldn't figure out Li Hongyuan's true intentions. Your Highness's words seem inappropriate. This old man thinks that it's more appropriate to choose the lesser of two evils. This prince was talking about the time when Patriarch Pei wasn't the patriarch. Patriarch Pei didn't know how many times he had changed his expression tonight. He felt that he probably didn't look at the almanac when he came to see his grandson today. Perhaps it was written that everything was inappropriate. He had been the patriarch for nearly 20 years. Before that, the only thing his grandson had mentioned was about his mother. The problem was that was 28 years ago. There weren't many people who knew the details. Could it be that his source of information was actually the same as the news about the descendants of the previous dynasty's imperial family? It was very likely. Who was this person? Who was it? However, since he knew about what happened 28 years ago, the scope of his search was much smaller. Patriarch Pei smiled bitterly. But I don't know what Your Highness has heard. Who's the one who started this rumor? What happened 28 years ago wasn't like what happened with the descendants of the previous dynasty. There was no conclusive evidence. If he insisted, who could say anything? The one on the throne said it. Does Patriarch Pei want to confront him face to face? Li Hongyuan said casually. Patriarch Pei even felt that it was amusing. It was as if he knew what Patriarch Pei was up to and was just teasing Patriarch Pei. But Patriarch Pei couldn't do anything about it. Patriarch Pei showed endless grief and indignation, but he seemed to be holding back because of the other party's identity. His Majesty's words are golden. Naturally, whatever he says is the truth. Li Hongyuan laughed lightly. His voice was clearly very pleasant to the ears, but to Patriarch Pei, it was filled with mockery. It was as if he was saying, "Who are you trying to show off to when everyone already knows this?" In Li Hongyuan's eyes, Patriarch Pei was just a clown. If he said it out loud, he could still argue for it. At least he could maintain it on the surface. This kind of feeling was like a fish bone stuck in one's throat. There was no room for argument. If he said it out loud, he would only receive a deeper level of humiliation. For example, "So you're this kind of person. You're really self-aware." His face was swept away, and his dignity was completely gone. It wasn't humiliation, it was humiliation. This was probably the most realistic portrayal of Patriarch Pei right now. How did he end up in this situation? In the end, Li Hongyuan knew a lot about him, but he knew nothing about the real Li Hongyuan. It's already late at night. Laofu will not disturb Wang Ye's rest, and will take his leave first. Patriarch Pei probably never expected that he would one day have to flee in defeat. Patriarch Pei shouldn't have turned back. Was it that his awareness wasn't deep enough? Or that he didn't want to disturb the noble Jin Qinhuang's rest? Patriarch Pei didn't want to think so much anymore. He hurriedly left. Being led by the nose, Patriarch Pei was naturally very unreconciled. However, he was a person who always put profit first. Would he bear a grudge against Li Hongyuan because of this, and consider finding another way out? No, he wouldn't. Not to mention the energy needed to make a new plan. The most secretive things could be known by this grandson. If he made a move, could he hide it from this grandson's eyes? This kind of thing couldn't be gambled, because he couldn't afford to lose. That night, Patriarch Pei was destined to have a sleepless night. Li Hongyuan didn't return to his room until Jingwan came to find him. Li Hongyuan hurriedly got up and pulled her into his arms. He slightly reprimanded her. "Although it's already summer, we live near the water. The night is colder than other places, and the humidity is heavy. What if the evil energy enters your body? You're already an adult. Why don't you know how to take care of your own body? Jingwan hugged his waist and shook it coquettishly. I can't sleep without you. He knew that she always slept regularly, and his heart couldn't help but soften when she was still awake. You could have sent someone to call me. You didn't have to come personally. Jingwan looked up at him and blinked. I thought you were still angry. It was rare to see her like this. Li Hongyuan couldn't help but laugh. If I'm really angry, I won't bother with you. Jingwan's lips moved, and then she stammered, I'm a little different from usual. Li Hongyuan instantly understood what she meant. Wan, if you miss me, you can tell me. Out of 10 times, he would use this as a pretext to make a fuss. That was called fun. When he was really angry, he wouldn't torture her. He was worried that he wouldn't be able to control himself and hurt her. However, his little sweetheart would misunderstand. In her eyes, was he someone who had to solve problems in bed? She was obviously an extremely intelligent woman, but why was she so pure in certain areas? He didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he couldn't do anything to her. Jingwan also realized that she had probably made a stupid mistake. Her face was completely red, and she wished she could find a hole to hide in. It was so embarrassing. Jingwan wanted to push him away, but how could she? It was rare for his wife to make a stupid mistake, and she invited him sincerely. Now that he was calm enough, how could Li Hongyuan let go of the delicious food that was right in front of his mouth? He lifted Jingwan up. Caught off guard, Jingwan hurriedly hooked her arms around his neck and angrily punched his shoulders twice. To Li Hongyuan, this was no different from scratching an itch. After the two of them fell asleep, they didn't know how much time had passed. The next morning, Li Hongyuan woke up, but Jingwan was still sleeping soundly. The room wasn't big and he was a martial artist, so his hearing was excellent. He could clearly hear what was going on outside. It seemed that many people had arrived. They were buzzing around like flies. It was so annoying. Servants. Jingwan's wet nurse hurried in. Your Highness, are you going to get up? Tell those people outside to scram as far away as possible. https://www.beacon.com/11/11807/66535569. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After making a report, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.beacon.com Mobile Edition. Chapter 300. Tell those people outside to scram as far away as possible. No one was surprised by Li Hongyuan's order. Jingwan's wet nurse responded softly and went out to pass on the message. Not long after, the sound disappeared, and even the other noises disappeared without a trace. This clearance was quite thorough. Li Hongyuan closed his eyes. No one knew if he was taking a nap or preparing to go back to sleep. Jingwan woke up naturally, not much later than usual. She didn't have the habit of lazing in bed, so she got up, washed up, and moved her arms and legs appropriately. When she turned around, a certain someone was still supporting his head with one hand, with a silk blanket draped around his waist, and looking at Jingwan with half-opened eyes. That posture was quite seductive. Speaking of which, there were so many things, but most of the things in their room were not taken away, especially the things on the bed. The bedroom was a place that those officials didn't dare to set foot in. It didn't matter how luxurious and extravagant it was. If they didn't even have this kind of treatment, Li Hongyuan would probably not hesitate to slaughter them. It would be abnormal if she didn't shorten her lifespan by a few years after facing such a man for a long time. Jingwan pinched her nose. If she wasn't obsessed with looks, she would be subconsciously obsessed with them. If she wasn't a pervert, she would feel sorry for herself if she didn't pounce on such a husband. In any case, Jingwan also felt that she was becoming more and more shameless. Thus, she pounced on Li Hongyuan without hesitation, leaving 2 teeth marks on his chest, and kissed him to her heart's content. Then, she looked up at him with a smile like a flower, and licked her lips with her tongue, as if she hadn't had enough. Li Hongyuan didn't move, nor did he respond. He just let Jingwan do what she wanted. When he saw Jingwan's appearance, he revealed a faint smile. He reached out and gently held the back of Jingwan's head, his fingertips rubbing the edge of her hair. Wan, you're so enthusiastic this morning. Did your husband not serve you well last night? Do you want to make up for it now? Jingwan's ears turned red, but she didn't back down. She drew circles on his shoulder with her finger. That's very thoughtful. But can't you let me savor it? Of course, how can it not be? I also want to savor it. It was not Li Hongyuan's style to let his wife take advantage of him. After a while, Li Hongyuan slowly got up and let Jingwan help him change his clothes clumsily. If he met an impatient person, he would probably be driven crazy by Jingwan. Fortunately, Li Hongyuan was very patient and had no intention of helping. Even so, the final result was not satisfactory. Jingwan felt a little ashamed that she was almost raised into a 9th grade handicap. She was probably the most unqualified wife. However, when she thought that her husband didn't care at all, she nimbly tidied up herself. The small flaws left by Jingwan were fixed. Even if he was dressed in rough clothes, he still looked dignified and handsome. Jingwan felt justified again. She couldn't help it. She had a good life. Li Hongyuan didn't know Jingwan's thoughts. If he knew, he would probably be more distressed. She didn't know how bad her life was. No matter how good her life was now, it was not enough to make up for it to a certain extent. However, Li Hongyuan was actually very glad that she didn't know and didn't remember. Probably no one wanted to go through that kind of life. After a crazy time, Jingwan also needed to freshen up. Then, the two of them had a simple meal. When everything was done, Jingwan followed Li Hongyuan out of the room. Caught off guard, Jingwan was really shocked. The structure of the water stronghold was not the same as ordinary buildings. There were no small courtyards or things like that. However, there was a platform in front of every house. There were all kinds of wooden bridges connecting them, and there were also wooden ladders going up and down. The only spacious platform was the same as the threshing ground in the countryside. It was mostly used to dry crops and things like that. Places higher than that were basically visible at a glance. Now, there was a group of people drying there, and all of them were wearing official robes. Even if they were of the lowest rank, it was enough to make anyone in the water stronghold revere them. At this time, most people probably clearly understood that Li Hongyuan was not ordinary. It had to be known that when they first saw him, they could still curiously look at him from afar. Now, almost every house was closed. In reality, this kind of mentality was very easy to understand. First, most people didn't know Li Hongyuan's identity. Second, information was blocked. Many people didn't know what a prince meant. Often, it wasn't as authoritative as the county magistrate that they could see or hear from up close. Now, any one of these people could make a person like the county magistrate be respectful. Now, they were all standing there like grandchildren, with their heads down and hands down, not saying a word. How could they not be afraid of such a person? When did these officials arrive? Jingwan asked the servant girl in a quiet voice. Wang Fei, there were officials arriving one after another in the middle of the night. The latest was more than 2 hours ago. They've been there since they arrived. In the middle of the night, they've been standing there in the cold wind? It must have been hard on these officials. Yes, the people of the water stronghold didn't dare to approach the officials. The officials also didn't say that they wanted to borrow a place to rest. Later, the people of the water stronghold sent them some hot soup. Then 2 hours ago, the officials came here and were driven away by Wang Ye. Qing Zhu explained clearly. Jingwan realized that when they came over, she reckoned that she was sleeping soundly. Very good. Jin Qinhuang once again overbearingly helped her take the blame. Jingwan didn't follow them. It wasn't very appropriate and it wasn't necessary. After Li Hongyuan left, Jingwan had people move a small stool and sat on the edge of the small platform outside. Looking down, she could see most of the water stronghold and the sparkling water surface. This place had good mountains and water. It was good to live in for a short period of time, but the humidity was too heavy. It probably wouldn't be good to live in for a long time. However, Jingwan saw that the people of the water stronghold were very healthy. Perhaps there was a unique method to get rid of the humidity. Ching, Zhu, son. How is Darren's situation? Son Darren is already fine. He woke up last night. The people of the water stronghold are very good at dispelling snake venom. The snake venom has basically been completely removed. Rest more, and after a few days, he will be fine. It's just that, at first, it was not discovered. Son Darren's right ankle was also injured. It is said that when it was discovered, it was already swollen like a steamed bun. That injury will probably require a longer period of recuperation. Qing Zhu explained in detail. Jingwan was silent for a moment. It's good that he's fine. Let the wet nurse go see him. Just say that the past is over, and that he should take care of himself. Jingwan thought that her attitude was very straightforward and decisive. She didn't leave the impression that she was clingy. Sun Yilan's deep affection for her made her a little puzzled. Although Li Hongyuan's deep affection for her also made her puzzled. Well, in her view of love, there was no such thing as love at first sight, but it didn't mean that others didn't. Moreover, Sun Yilan's feelings for her couldn't be considered as love at first sight. In the end, there was more or less a factor in it. Because of the restrictions on women, they didn't go out of the house and had little contact with other men. Men naturally had little opportunities to come into contact with other women. This woman was easily moved by a man who existed most of the time, and relatively speaking, this man should be the same. Common interests were the cornerstone of a relationship. When Sun Yilan first fell in love with her, was there not a factor of flowers and trees in it? No one believed it. Yes. Qing Zhu answered and turned to leave. When the wet nurse went to say it, of course, it wouldn't be as simple as just passing on Jingwan's words. Some things were better explained to him clearly. Perhaps it was a bit cruel for Sun Yilan, but as the saying goes, it's better to have a short pain than a long pain. Only when he completely let it go would it be the best result for everyone. As Jingwan expected, her wet nurse went to see Sun Yilan and also sent some food. Because he hadn't eaten well for several days, the food sent was some light and liquid food. The wet nurse attentively served him the food. Then, according to his intention, she helped him up to sit by the window and opened the window to let in some fresh air. However, from his position, he could see the big platform, but he couldn't see Jingwan's location. Although he couldn't hear the specific situation, but from the official's stiff posture, he could roughly guess what was going on. For the officials in the capital, the higher the rank, the more times they would experience Jin Qinhuang's fierceness. These people were no exception. Sun Yilan took 2 glances, and then withdrew his line of sight. Then, he asked about the matter this time. The general content had already been strung together. As for the details, he only said that the situation at that time was too frightening. He was scared witless, and just ran for his life. How could he pay attention to those things? For the women of the inner residence, this was the best excuse. Then, at the right time, they would show their lingering fear. Basically, there would be no one who wouldn't believe it and wouldn't pursue it. There would be a bit of pity in their hearts, and they didn't want to evoke the fear in the other's heart. Sun Yilan's purpose, the wet nurse naturally knew. She also followed his intention and talked about Jingwan. Then, she vaguely expressed that Wang Yi was a vinegar jar. Towards Wang Fei's previous 2 fiancés, he was very wary and possessive. Even if it was the brothers and elders of her maternal family, or even anyone else, as long as they paid more attention, Wang Fei might be tormented later on. In order to dispel Sun Yilan's thoughts, the wet nurse said these words in a more serious manner. Even if the meaning wasn't stated clearly, it couldn't be more obvious. Sun Gongzi, if you sincerely want the good of our family's Wang Fei, it's best that you don't appear again, and don't pay any attention. However, the wet nurse blindly spoke and didn't notice Sun Yilan's increasingly dark and unclear expression. The wet nurse's purpose may have been achieved, but at the same time, it also caused some misunderstandings in Sun Yilan. Although he knew that Li Hongyuan wasn't as unbearable as he appeared to be, but his temperament was malicious, ruthless, and temperamental. Who could guarantee that these weren't true? Moreover, there were indeed women who died in his hands. Torment. Sun Yilin unreservedly thought of this. When he looked at Li Hongyuan again, Sun Yilin's eyes carried an endless chill. That was clearly the woman he admired, the person he wanted to hold in the palm of his hand like a pearl or a treasure. He couldn't get her, but Li Hongyuan easily got her. After getting her, he didn't cherish her. His heart was narrow, and he wantonly trampled on women. What kind of man was he? He had once thought that a woman like Miss Luo, even Jean Qinhuang, would cherish her well. Sure enough, he was too naive. For a man like him who was scheming and shrewd, his heart probably only wanted the power of the country. What did a woman count for? However, he was powerless to do anything now. If there was any movement, it would most likely cause immeasurable consequences. Anyone. Sun Yilin lowered his eyelids, covering the endless haze in his eyes. Mama, don't worry. In the future, I won't cause any trouble for Luo. Jean Qinhuang Fei. I won't. This was the only thing he could do now. As for the rest. Sun Yilin's fingernails were almost about to sink into the flesh of his palms. The wet nurse breathed a sigh of relief and patted her chest, unconsciously revealing a smile. This naturally couldn't be better. Then Gongzi, have a good rest. Soon, we should be leaving this place. All right, I'll have to trouble Mama. The wet nurse left the room and closed the door behind her. Sun Yilin sat in the same place, his head bowed for a long time, quiet and without a sound. Until a certain time, when he raised his head again, no one would be able to see any abnormality on his face. Jingwan probably didn't think that her wet nurse's words barely achieved her goal, but the opposite effect was even worse. So much so that when some things happened in the future, she couldn't find a reason. How Jean Qinhuang treated her. As long as one had eyes, they would be able to see it. Why was he the only one who held a different view and firmly believed that hearsay is false, and that what he heard from other people's mouths were all false? In fact, he had long known of this consequence. It wasn't just a preconceived notion. At this moment, Sun Yilin firmly believed that Li Hongyuan didn't treat Jingwan well. All the good that he showed was just an act. The purpose was to confuse everyone and make them think that he was a sentimental person, so that people would lower their vigilance towards him, so that he could act in secret. He couldn't see Jingwan and didn't know her true state. At first, at this very moment, his perception had never changed. The wet nurse went back to report to Jingwan and solemnly vowed that she had already spoken to Sun Gongzi. Jingwan chuckled. Oh? Then what did the wet nurse say? The wet nurse was about to repeat, but Li Hongyuan came back. Naturally, she immediately chose to keep her mouth shut. With such an interruption, Jingwan also forgot to ask again. Otherwise, she should have been able to perceive something. It was just that she missed it, which led to some immeasurable consequences. Li Hongyuan faintly swept a glance at the wet nurse, as if he knew what she was talking about. The wet nurse kept quiet out of fear, lowered her head, and stiffened her body. Jingwan got up and walked in front of Li Hongyuan. You can withdraw. I want to talk to Wanya. Even if a certain person never got angry with the people around her, it seemed that other than Gong Mama, everyone else was very afraid of him. When they could not get close, they would try their best not to get close. This made him feel rather helpless. Yes. The wet nurse and Qing Zhu quickly left. Jingwan's purpose was clear at a glance, and Li Hongyuan was too lazy to expose it. Yuan, when are we leaving? We're already preparing. Jingwan nodded, and then seemed to have thought of something. So many adults, what do they think when they see you dressed like this? What do they think? Does death count as an atonement? https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653571. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken. Com. Biku Mobile Reading Website. Bikin. Com. Chapter 301. What thoughts? Does death count as an apology? Li Honyuan said thoughtfully. Jingwan snorted. If it was an official from Shannon County, it would be fine. After all, they had never seen Jin Qinhuang's extravagance and fastidiousness. However, the officials of Kai Mingfu were different. They had personally experienced that scene. Now that this honorable lord was dressed so shabbily, it was a feeling that they could not bear to look straight at. They would not go so far as to apologize with death, but their hearts would definitely be perturbed. After all, they still cherished their lives very much. Let's not talk about them. I have already ordered them to send people into the mountains to look for people. According to the original plan, Gong Mama's group will be the first to return. The rest will slowly converge after leaving here. I reckon that when Gong Mama's group returns, the preparations here will be almost complete. After that, when we arrive at Chongzhoufu, we will probably start to be busy for a while. Not only will I be busy, you will also be very busy. It can't be said that you are busier than me. It's still the same words. If someone gives it to you, just accept it. If you like it, keep it. If you don't like it, take it back and give it to Fu Huang to enrich the national treasury. Presumably, he will be quite happy. In the end, Li Honyuan said sarcastically, it would be good if he was really happy. I'm afraid that the more we give, the less happy he will be. The more they gave, the more these officials would be greedy. If the gifts that were casually given were so extravagant, then the gifts that were not taken out would definitely be even more expensive. In this way, should we collect more or less for him? If we collect more, he will be unhappy, and that will be unfilial. If we collect less, we will connive at those vermin and endanger the river, and that will be disloyal. It is truly difficult to balance loyalty and filial piety. Li Honyuan had a rather awkward expression. Fu Huang is first a monarch and then a father. When it is difficult to balance loyalty and filial piety, naturally we will choose loyalty and abandon filial piety. Besides, helping him to stabilize the country, is that not the best filial piety? Jingwan comforted. Wang Fei's words are reasonable. Then we will have to trouble Wang Fei. Wang Fei will work hard and help Fu Huang collect more. Li Hongyuan's face was stern. Jingwan couldn't hold back her laughter. Wasn't it a little inappropriate to be so serious about tricking Emperor Lu Qingdi? However, he had brought this upon himself. Jiangnan's officialdom had been messed up by many officials and his sons. He could hardly absolve himself from the blame. In the end, it was the result of poor supervision. If Li Honyuan had not helped him expose it, he did not know how far this cancer would have spread. Perhaps the entire Jiangnan would have been completely divided up. As a result, the next emperor would not only not receive the taxes from Jiangnan, but would also have to spend money to fill the hole and restore normal operations. Of course, from Jingwan's point of view, this was Li Honyuan clearing away obstacles for his future. Then, Granny Gong and the others returned. Your nanny is quite dedicated to you. You can't wait any longer. Li Honyuan said indifferently. What's wrong? Is a Yuan jealous again? Jingwan raised her eyebrows and smiled. Probably. This was the first time such an uncertain answer had been given. In fact, Li Honyuan was a little embarrassed. How should he put it? Since he was born, Granny Gong had been secretly watching him. Of course, he did not know for a long time in his previous life. When he came back, when he was 10 years old, he found out about her existence. After that, he had been deliberately training her. She had been with him for a long time. In the end, after serving Wan Wan, she completely sided with Wan Wan. She even disliked him. Well, this was what Li Honyuan expected. So, even if he was a little jealous, there was nothing to say. In fact, when she was a female bodyguard, she had a problem with him. It was just that she did not say it out loud, because he was the master. The reason was that she was influenced by her first master. Even in an isolated environment, she still hoped that the imperial noble consort's child could be as gentle and kind as the imperial noble consort. However, she also knew that it was impossible. In a place like the imperial noble consort, it might be possible to be gentle and kind if one wanted to live well, but one's feelings should never be dominant. The imperial noble consort was actually the best example. Wan Wan was more in line with her wishes. It was only because Wan Wan's temperament was somewhat similar to the imperial noble consort that she mentioned. Granny Gong's existence was more or less special to him. His tolerance was slightly higher than that of other people except for Wan Wan. However, Granny Gong had always been a person of self-restraint and etiquette. She never overstepped her boundaries and served her master wholeheartedly. Therefore, if she had a problem with him in some aspects, he would ignore it. Even if you want to put on a show, you have to complete it. I'll go and have a look. Jingwan chuckled. When Jingwan saw Granny Gong, she was really stunned. Originally, it was just a matter of putting on a show. As long as they avoided the soldiers who might enter the mountain, they did not need to go too deep. How could they be so embarrassed after leaving for less than 20 hours? It really seemed that they had spent a few days in the mountain, and some people were really injured. Jingwan hurried forward and grabbed Granny Gong. Granny, what happened? Don't worry, princess. They just encountered a pack of wolves. Jingwan's heart suddenly jumped to her throat. Her husband's bodyguards could be trusted by him, so they were not ordinary people. It seemed that none of them were intact. It could be seen that the number of wolves was quite considerable. However, Granny Gong, as a woman of the inner residence, you said just a pack of wolves so casually. Is it really okay? Jingwan was so worried in her heart that she did not notice this problem. Granny, how are you? Are you hurt? Don't worry, princess. I was just bitten. The wound is not deep. It's nothing serious. Granny Gong comforted Jingwan. On the contrary, the bodyguards behind Granny Gong lowered their heads and felt a little ashamed. Although the shock in their hearts gradually subsided, they would never forget that scene for the rest of their lives. Almost 20 wolves, 1/3 of them were killed by this granny who looked so serious. She was such an ordinary woman in daily life, but when she killed, she was so decisive and extremely cruel. At that moment, she was like a figure who walked out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. If they did not see it with their own eyes, they would not believe that the person in front of them was the same person. It was more like they were twins with completely different temperaments. Unfortunately, at this moment, there was no need to put on a show. Anyway, the officials did not dare to come close and could not hear what they said. Jingwan asked people to treat their wounds quickly. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan, who was worried and busy. His expression was indifferent, as if it had nothing to do with him. When the bodyguard's wounds were almost treated with the help of others, Li Hongyuan appeared. They hurriedly got up. Greetings, master. Li Hongyuan casually waved his hand. What's the situation? Master, it should be purely an accident. After the wolves were killed, we carefully checked the surrounding situation. There was nothing unusual. However, Li Hongyuan was not satisfied with this answer. Send a message to the people outside. Investigate again. He knew very well that there was at least a group of people hidden in the dark. They had nothing to do with the real water bandits. It was only because of clan leader Pei's strange movements that the other party's plan was interrupted. The problem was that there was no trace of these people. The people who stayed in Kaming Mansion to keep an eye on the officials did not send any valuable information. Therefore, he could not let his guard down. Yes. Looking at it now, the people who stayed by Li Hongyuan's side were either weak or injured. Moreover, the people who served him were far from enough. It should be considered a good opportunity to operate. However, this matter was not urgent. No matter what, they had to reach Chongzhou Mansion first. Even if there was a girl who could be considered acceptable in this place, she was not one of their own. Everything was ready to go. Because the waterway in the middle was narrow, large ships could not enter. Similarly, they could only use small boats. Now that there were too many people, they could only split into batches. When the large number of soldiers had almost left, they carefully asked Li Hongyuan and the others to leave. Just like when Li Hongyuan saw them before, he did not make things difficult for them and left as he said. However, the officials who came from Kaming Mansion were exceptionally perturbed. Because at this time, Jin Qinhuang was increasingly cold and severe. It was clear that he was suppressing a burst of anger. The more he suppressed it, the more it would explode. It was better to vent some of it now. It must be known that the anger in Kaming Mansion had not been vented yet. Their emotions imperceptibly infected the people of Shannon County. As a result, all the officials seemed to shrink back a little. At this time, it was still considered early. The sun was far from reaching the top of their heads. Beads of sweat were falling down one by one. When Jingwan saw this, she felt a little pity. Was this living king of hell so terrifying? However, at this time, she naturally could not tear down her own husband's stage. Even if she was dressed in plain clothes, she still properly carried herself. With a cold face, she expressed that she was also quite unhappy. Her gaze swept over the former governor of Tongzhou County. It was only a demotion of 3 levels. Wasn't it a little too little? Then she took a look at the big winner, Governor Su. He still had a respectful and humble appearance. After they all boarded the small boat and left one after another, 2 soldiers knocked on Sun Yilan's door. "Sun Darren, it's time to go. Come in." Sun Yilan's voice that was neither sad nor happy came over. These 2 people happened to be searching with Sun Yilan and naturally knew about Sun Yilan's current state. Some gossip could not be said, but in fact, they sympathized with Sun Yilan. "You say you have a dignified appearance, a strong background, and also received the emperor's favor. At a young age, you held an important position and had a boundless future. How many good girls in the world were waiting for you to choose from?" Well, they also did not understand this kind of thing. Perhaps Jin Qinhuang Fei was really that good. It was clearly not that long ago, but when Jingwan boarded the official boat on the canal again, she had a kind of absent-minded feeling. This experience seemed to be really special. This was also when a certain person had eliminated the dangerous elements. Otherwise, it would not be the so-called special, but thrilling and exciting. Thinking about that scene, would anyone like it? It was hard to say if one had not experienced it. However, unless one was someone who liked excitement, otherwise, under normal circumstances, no one would like it. Because the canal was still blocked, even if there were many official boats, there was no need to clear the area in advance. The journey was smooth and unimpeded. Because the wind had been following them, they arrived at Chongzhou Prefecture very quickly. The ferry in Chongzhou Prefecture was naturally not as good as in Kaming Prefecture. However, now was not the time to look at this. They roughly understood the situation of Li Hongyuan and the others, so they had prepared everything they needed. Not only that, it should be said that the women of the inner residence knew the ways of the inner residence better. The maids they had prepared were also the best. Perhaps they did not have any spare maids, but when they saw that there were only 2 or 3 maids, these madams looked at each other and smiled tacitly. They all secretly praised themselves for making a wise decision. The imperial family of Qi Yuan did not have the hobby of building palaces everywhere. Therefore, the place where they stayed was the best side courtyard in Chongzhou Prefecture. For the time being, they did not know who it belonged to. Li Hongyuan did not say a word from beginning to end. When he entered the side courtyard, he just went straight inside. Although he did not say anything, there was always an air of enough. The group of Darren naturally stayed in the front courtyard, but those madams entered the second gate. The guards and retainers that could be seen everywhere had now all become a row of beautiful maids. Jin Qinhuang's figure had already disappeared. It was a little regretful that they did not see his reaction. "Madams, it has been hard on you to carefully select these people," Jingwan said with a faint smile, but anyone could see that there was no smile in her eyes. All the madams' hearts thumped, thinking that this was bad. They only cared about Jin Qinhuang and forgot about Jin Qinhuang Fei. As long as it was a woman, they would not like someone to put beautiful women in front of their husband. Now that so many of them were placed, in her eyes, it was especially eye-catching. Although everything depended on Jin Qinhuang Fei also could not be neglected. This pillow talk was sometimes more powerful than anything else. One of the madam's mind turned quickly to be able to serve Wang Yi and Wang Fei. That is the honor of this subject's wife and others. How could it be hard? However, these people were selected by this subject's wife from various families. They are certainly not as good as Wang Fei Nyang-Yang's personal people. When Wang Fei Nyang-Yang's people arrive, these obstructing people, whether Wang Fei Nyang-Yang wants to keep them or send them away, it will all be up to you. For now, we will have to inconvenience Wang Yi and you. Jingwan nodded her head indifferently, tacitly agreeing with their actions. The Furins secretly looked again. That, to let these people leave, it would take at least 2 or 3 days. Who knew if there would be any unforeseen events during this period of time? If Jin Qinhuang slept with the people himself, could he blame it on their heads? They were all secretly competing to see who would be the first to rise. That being the case, I won't. Wang Fei, it's not good. Mu Gonggong hurriedly trotted over, his face deathly pale. Wang Yi took the 2 servant girls who came in to bathe. She got the hang of it so quickly? Which family did this belong to? The madams looked at each other with hidden expectations. But Jingwan's face suddenly became not so good. Speak clearly. Wang Yi has strangled them to death, Mu Gonggong said, trembling a little. But whether it was real trembling or fake trembling, only he himself knew. Obviously, the madams were happy too early. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653574. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 302. Jingwan covered her eyes with her hands, hiding all her emotions. After a moment, she put down her hands and said coldly, "Madams, you can go back first. Since this person came to this courtyard, it has nothing to do with your families." Obviously, this was to help them absolve themselves of the blame. One had to know that in this kind of situation, not to mention finding trouble with the murderer, only the murderer would vent his anger on others. If he really wanted to get to the bottom of this, then it was obvious that the family that the 2 maidservants originally belonged to would have to bear the responsibility. Jingwan said that the people in this courtyard had nothing to do with them. Naturally, she drew a clear line between them and the people in this courtyard. The joy and expectation on the madams' faces froze on their faces. Because of the shock that appeared in an instant, their faces were distorted. Obviously, their bodies had given such a direct reaction, but their minds were still in a daze. Only when Jingwan spoke did they respond with an "oh." In fact, they probably didn't know what they said. Jingwan didn't bother to pay attention to them anymore. She had already done her utmost benevolence. "Muin, see the guests out." She flicked her sleeves and left. This place was far from being familiar with. Jingwan casually asked a person to lead the way. The little maid was very excited about the task that fell on her. When she walked to Jingwan, she was even somewhat at a loss. However, she soon muttered in her heart, "How could a dignified princess wear such coarse clothes that people like us disdained?" Although she thought about it, she didn't dare to show the slightest abnormality. Perhaps in order to express herself as much as possible, the little maid tried to use innocent words to introduce the courtyard. Obviously, she didn't know what happened in the backyard. If it was in a normal situation, Jingwan might be in the mood to listen. But now, she only felt bored and unconsciously frowned. Qing Zhu grabbed the little maid. "Okay, let's stop here. Take this broken silver to buy sweets first. Later, the princess will reward you heavily." Although the little maid was somewhat unwilling, she naturally accepted the reward happily. Then she left while looking back 3 times with every step, hoping that Jingwan would let her stay. Although it was a bath, it was not in the bathroom at the back of the bedroom. Instead, it was a small hot spring at the back of the main courtyard. There was no door, only layers of gauze curtains. The faint sound of water could be heard. Obviously, Li Honyuan was still inside. Jingwan looked at the person who was wrapped in the mat on the ground. She could only vaguely see a pair of bare feet. She no longer had any hope. This time, Li Honyuan really did not hesitate to kill someone. In such a short time, it was not difficult to guess that he did not hesitate at all. Buy 2 thin coffins and bury them. Jingwan retracted her gaze. Could Jingwan's heart be as calm as still water in the face of the dead? No, it was just that he was already dead. What else could he do? 2 guards came forward, nimbly carried the bodies, and left quickly. They seemed to be quite skilled in their work. Jingwan looked at the small hot spring again. Although she had seen Li Honyuan kill people before, it was under special circumstances. This time, Jingwan seemed to truly understand what it meant to be malicious, ruthless, and temperamental. 2 fresh lives were killed without any hesitation. She had told him not to kill unless it was necessary. He had said it well. What about these 2 people? Did they have to die? At this moment, Jingwan was actually a little hesitant. Originally, these 2 bodies could have been disposed of before she arrived. He could also have asked someone to keep the news a secret. But he did not do so. So, did he deliberately leave them for her to see? Jingwan stood in the same place, looking at an unknown place in a daze. Nurse Gong and the others stood to the side, anxious. But they could only be anxious. At this time, they could not say or do anything. Then, Jingwan finally came back to her senses. Nurse Gong spread the news. Make sure everyone in this courtyard knows. There's no need to ban them. Yes. This method was not only to prevent some people from having evil thoughts, but also to prevent them from losing their lives. Jingwan finally lifted the layers of gauze curtains. When she reached the last layer, she happened to meet Li Hongyuan's eyes. At that moment, it was as if everything in the world was frozen. After calming down, Jingwan even thought about what it meant to have a gaze that lasted 10,000 years. This was probably it. No matter if the other person did something that made you unhappy, you could forgive and tolerate them. You had him in your heart, and he would always be there. That was all. She had probably fallen into this man's hands. Not to mention other things, when her 3 views could be changed for him, her bottom line could also be lowered again and again. What else was there to say? Perhaps they still needed to get used to each other, but many things were already confirmed. Li Honyuan put his hands behind him on the edge of the hot spring, quietly looking at Jingwan. Similarly, he did not say anything. His eyes did not even have the gentleness and affection when he looked at Jingwan in the past. They were calm, without the slightest trace of emotion. Did that also represent his heart? No, that was not it. He was waiting. For the first time, he knew that waiting was actually a kind of torture. Those 2 people, must we kill them? Jingwan finally asked. No. Li Honyuan replied without hesitation. He tilted his head slightly, as if he was looking at Jingwan more seriously. He did not say anything else, nor did he explain. He also did not show the slightest bit of guilt for going back on his words. It was as if he was certain that Jingwan would not be angry, or as if he did not care at all. Jingwan actually felt a little helpless in her heart. Wasn't he the one who did something wrong? Who was he trying to show such a self-righteous look to? What would happen if he gave in? At this time, being arrogant might really kill someone. Jingwan stepped forward and stepped into the water with her clothes on. She slowly swam to Li Hongyuan's side. Li Hongyuan took her into his arms and smiled sincerely. Obviously, Jingwan's actions really pleased him. He could not help but rub his forehead against Jingwan's. At this moment, he was like a child who had obtained his long-awaited beloved thing. Only the purest of joy was left. The wet clothes sticking to her body was not very comfortable, but Jingwan did not care. She rested her chin on Li Hongyuan's shoulder, and all the negative emotions in her heart dissipated. She lazily half-squinted her eyes and gently stroked his body without any hesitation. "If I get angry and turn away, what will you do?" "Wan, why don't you take a guess?" Li Hongyuan said meaningfully. She knew from his tone that it was definitely not something good. "I'm not guessing, but it's most likely that I won't like it. So, Wan, you should feel wise for your choice." Li Hongyuan kissed her forehead again. It was not a wise choice, nor was it a deliberate avoidance of possible danger. It was just because of this man. Even if he did not show anything, she always felt that if she left, he would be sad. He would not show his sadness. How could she bear to? The two of them were sticky in the small hot spring, whispering sweet nothings to each other. The adults in the outer courtyard were not in a good mood, especially after learning about someone's atrocity. Compared to Li Hongyuan, Jingwan, and the others, they were really not in a good mood, especially those of a certain age. Since last night, they had been tossing and turning and basically did not eat or drink much. It could be said that they were physically and mentally exhausted. When they were on the boat, they had some time to rest, but in this state, how could they fall asleep? At this moment, they could not hold on any longer. Their bodies were really shaking. At this moment, they did not know if it was because they were frightened, but they actually fainted. Fainting at this time was not a bad thing. The others might look disdainful on the surface, but in their hearts, they might be a little envious. At least they could escape temporarily. However, it was probably not much different from drinking to drown one's sorrows. In the end, they still had to face it. Jingwan looked at the clothes Nanny Gong brought in and reached out to touch the material. It was of the best quality. These people are quite fast. However, Nanny Gong was not very satisfied. After all, they were rushed out. The workmanship and embroidery are not good. I guess the clothes are a little too big for the upper body. Prince and princess, please bear with it for a few days. There may not be many things in Jiangnan, but there are definitely many embroiderers. Find more embroiderers, and don't use those complicated embroidery methods and patterns. Choose simple and delicate ones, and the final result will be the same. It's not that bad. Nanny, you can deal with the rest as you see fit. Embroidery was secondary. The workmanship and the fit were the most important. They had been used to it for a long time. If the workmanship was not good or the fit was not good, they could easily feel it. Li Hongyuan watched and listened idly. When they finished, and Nanny Gong turned to leave, he stood up. He casually wiped off the water droplets on his body and then put on the clothes. Unconsciously, he frowned. As expected, the things rushed out are not good. See, it was like this. They knew what was good and bad when they put on the clothes. It's mainly because we don't know the size. It's good that we didn't make it too small for you. Jingwan helped him adjust the position of his shoulders. If these places were smaller, it would be too tight. Then, you really wouldn't be able to put it on. Such a small thing, but they can make such a big mess. They should be guilty by another level. Jingwan smiled and didn't respond. For some people, it didn't make a difference whether they were guilty by another level or not. After putting on the clothes, they went back to the room to wash their hair. Looking at the things in the room, other than some decorations, the ordinary things were all newly bought. It was clear that they had put in a lot of effort. However, in Li Hongyuan's eyes, there were all kinds of disdain. If there was a better choice, he probably wouldn't have stretched out his hand. Wan, you go and tidy up first. Jingwan didn't stand on ceremony. She went directly to the cleaning room at the back. Then Eunuch Mu entered the room and reported the situation of the officials. Li Hongyuan didn't even lift his eyelids. Tell them to get out of here. Without my summons, they are not allowed to appear in front of me. Yes, it was the same trick, but the officials of Kaming Prefecture were familiar with it. They were unfamiliar with it the first time, but they were familiar with it the second time. Their expressions were normal. The officials of Chongzhou Prefecture had such a wonderful expression. However, without Li Hongyuan's order, the people of Kaming Prefecture could only waste their time here. They belonged to Tongzhou Prefecture, so they couldn't interfere in the affairs of Shannon Prefecture. especially those soldiers, could only shrink back. It was so miserable. From top to bottom, they had things to do in their own territory and were relaxed, but they had to pretend to be subservient here. As expected, the calmest one was still Governor Su. According to his words, it was rare for him to leave Tongzhou Prefecture. Now, he had the chance, and he didn't have to worry about the government affairs. So why not? Seeing his hypocrisy, the former governor was so angry that his nose almost went crooked. He didn't clean up his mess, but now he wasted his time here. It should be known that the more time he wasted here, the more danger his family would be in. This old dog, either he cleaned it up himself, or he had made arrangements long ago. There was no problem even if he didn't stay here. Li Hongyuan didn't care what they thought. He stayed in the yard for 2 days and didn't go out. The people who were lost on the way were also found. They didn't encounter the same accident as Nanny Gong and others. Therefore, the maids were all fine. In addition, the other servants who stayed in Kaming Prefecture before also came to Chongzhou Prefecture. Jingwan remembered that there was a problem in the kitchen. She asked her husband about it, but he was calm and not in a hurry to deal with it. Since he was calm, Jingwan naturally didn't care about it anymore. On the 3rd day, Li Hongyuan finally made a move. With a single sentence, he gathered all of the more capable accountants of the entire Chongzhou Prefecture. Everyone was uneasy about what he was going to do. Li Hongyuan was very straightforward this time. He did not keep everyone in suspense. With a single order, he handed over all of the accounts of the Chongzhou Prefecture for the past 10 years from various aspects. This move was simple and crude. Previously, even if they thought of all ways to settle the accounts, 10 years was too long. No matter how they settled it, there would be loopholes. Moreover, they used all the accountants in Chongzhou Prefecture, including the merchants' private accounts, the various government offices' accounts, and the big houses' accounts. It could be said that all kinds of people were mixed together. Because of this, it was harder to fake it. The hearts of the officials were beating wildly. They tried to find all kinds of words to delay it. Li Hongyuan didn't say a word. Then, the blackguards were mobilized. Initially, there were 50 blackguards on the surface. Although they knew through certain channels that the number needed to be doubled. Now, damn it, the number had reached 500. It was a dark mass. Just looking at it made people tremble. Even if there were tens of thousands of ordinary soldiers, they wouldn't have such a feeling. The blackguards wouldn't be courteous to you. If you dared to stop them, they wouldn't hesitate to draw a knife to your neck. If you snorted, you would see blood. Li Suyen personally led the team. He was overflowing with hostility. He was simply another version of the king of hell. The person in charge at first tried to joke with him, but he directly cut off an arm, killing the chicken to warn the monkey. It could be said that he was ruthless. Therefore, the time to collect the account books was rather fast. They were all gathered in the courtyard where Li Hongyuan and the others were temporarily staying. Li Hongyuan showed up. All the officials in Chongzhou Prefecture were also gathered. They moved the arhut bed and leaned against it in full view of everyone. Swinging his horsetail whisk, Eunuch Mu stepped forward and said to the accountants in a sharp voice, "Listen up, everyone. Each of you will have a part of these account books. Separate rooms have been prepared for each of you. Check them carefully. Don't count on cheating. The account books that have been checked will be handed over to other people to check. If the people behind you can't find out the truth, you have to consider more than just your own heads. Think about your family members. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653575. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 303. It was an obvious threat. Not only were the accountants trembling, but the officials beside them were also trembling. Eunuch Mu didn't seem to mind the trouble. He looked at the officials gloomily and said, "What His Highness means is that when these account books are all sorted out, you can go home. If you can do it in 1 day, then 2 days. If 2 days don't work, then 3 days. If 3 days don't work, then 4 to 5 days. Everything will be sorted out eventually. Of course, those who don't have a problem can go home. Otherwise, you'll have to move to another place." The black-robed guards were standing by the side. There was one person guarding the door of each room. There were 4 rooms inside. The door of each room was open, and the situation inside was clear at a glance. The degree of strictness was countless times worse than an imperial examination. Most of the officials only had one thought left in their minds. It's over, it's completely over. His Highness, isn't it inappropriate to let accountants outside the yamen check the accounts? Governor Sun stood out and said. The others nodded secretly in their hearts. If these people intervened, wouldn't everyone know the financial situation of the government? If Father blames us, I'll bear the responsibility. You don't have to worry about it. Governor Su retreated and didn't speak anymore. It should be known that the accounts of Chongzhou Prefecture had nothing to do with him. The accountants came forward to take the account books with fear and trepidation. Then they entered the room one by one and began to calculate. One must know that these people were all outstanding talents, and they had done plenty of falsification in the past as well. As such, they knew most of the tricks involved. Yet, before they had even flipped through the books, they were already sweating profusely. Li Hongyuan was also in a very leisurely mood to accompany them. The scorching sun was overhead. Li Hongyuan held up an oversized umbrella over his head. There was iced soup to dispel the heat, fresh fruits, and the fan of the imperial bodyguard. In comparison, the others were suffering. If there was no such contrast, perhaps they would feel a little better. Living king of hell, living king of hell. Whether it was his reckless means of not being afraid of offending anyone, or his vile nature of not taking others seriously, these 3 words were incisively and vividly displayed. If it had been anyone else, let alone the other princes, even Emperor Lu Qingdi would not have been so ruthless. Li Hongyuan waved his hand, and Eunuch Mu immediately ran to fetch a part of the account books that had been checked. The problems had been marked, so it was clear at a glance. Li Hongyuan flipped through them casually, but he didn't find any clues from Eunuch Mu's face. After flipping through one book, he threw it aside and turned to the next one. Your courage is much smaller than I expected. Was this an exaggeration? Could he let out a sigh of relief because of this? As expected, Jin Qinhuang was someone who did not understand the affairs of the general public and did not know the value of gold and silver. Mama Gong came over and said, "Your Highness, it's time for lunch. Her Highness sent me to ask where the food is." "Where do we need to put it?" "1 bowl of noodle soup for each of us. We can just carry it and eat it." "Where else do we need to put it?" The corner of Mama Gong's mouth couldn't help but twitch. "Your Highness, do you have to be so mean? It's just a meal. How can you go so far? Aren't you afraid of being cursed by so many people?" Well, it was said that a scourge would live for 1,000 years. The scourge of scourges was the scourge of scourges. How many people had cursed him? He didn't seem to be hurt at all. Yes. After sitting for a while, Li Hongyuan stood up slowly. Obviously, he was ready to go back to enjoy his delicious food. He hadn't even taken a few steps when a large group of people came over with food. They walked up to Li Hongyuan and greeted him in an orderly manner. There was no lack of beautiful maids who had been left here before. However, no one dared to do anything unruly now, let alone seducing the master of the palace. Your Highness, Her Highness, said that this table must be here and sent someone to ask. It was superfluous, so she asked us to bring it over. After all, they had been husband and wife for more than 2 months. In addition, they had been together day and night. Their relationship had warmed up quickly. Some things should be said and shouldn't be said, but they had spoken frankly. The tacit understanding gradually formed. For example, at this moment, Mama Gong hadn't gone back yet. Jingwan turned her head and guessed what Li Honyuan might do. She directly made the decision. When Li Honyuan saw the food, he roughly understood Jingwan's intention. He snorted mysteriously and left in a huff. The servants obeyed Her Highness's orders. They quickly set up the table and placed the food one by one. It could be said that the food was delicious. In addition, when the good wine was poured, the fragrance uncontrollably went into the nose. The crowd looked at each other and swallowed their saliva. Should they eat or not? They didn't even have breakfast and went out in a hurry. Their stomachs were already complaining about the empty city strategy. The leader was undoubtedly Governor Su. Although he couldn't intervene in the affairs of Shannon Commandery, in terms of rank, he was the highest. The governor and other people of Shannon Commandery hadn't arrived yet. The governor of Shannon Commandery had gone to other manors to inspect, but he hadn't found anyone yet. The governor happened to be absent. Everyone knew that these people would hide as long as they could. They would only show up when they couldn't hide anymore. Governor Su said, "If we don't eat, wouldn't it be a waste of Her Highness's kindness?" So everyone ate without any pressure. After that, she sent food to the accountants. Of course, the food was of a lower class. There was no other way. The difference in class was obvious. No one would feel that there was anything wrong with it. If Jingwan were to make a fuss about it, it would be strange. On the contrary, even if the food was of a lower class, it was rare for the accountants to eat it. They temporarily put aside their worries and had a good appetite. Then, this group of black-robed guards naturally couldn't be left behind. They went to eat in batches. Don't blame Jingwan for being biased. This group of brothers' meals were better than those Darren. Of course, there were a lot of people. If they wanted to fill everyone's stomachs, the kitchen space was far from enough. They had to set up a temporary stove. After that, it was time for the various officials to contribute their manpower. Speaking of which, even if they lent people to Li Honyuan, they still had to suffer and be frightened. How miserable was that? After the meal, the accountants continued to work. The others waited for Li Hongyuan's arrival. They waited and waited, but didn't see his shadow. Although they didn't want to face Li Hongyuan, but if he was in front of them, they could feel a little more at ease. If they couldn't see him, who knew what kind of tricks he was secretly playing? However, in the current situation, these black-robe guards weren't just guarding those accountants. Naturally, they were also guarding them. So there was no way to inquire about anything. They could only hope that Jin Qinhuang was actually intoxicated by the warmth and tenderness and had been staying in the inner courtyard. However, was Li Honyuan in the inner courtyard? As the saying goes, good things don't come true, bad things come true. Li Honyuan really wasn't in the other courtyard at this moment. Instead, he went to the treasury of Chongzhou Prefecture. Of course, he also brought along Jingwan. Li Honyuan wanted to check the treasury of Chongzhou Prefecture. The people guarding the treasury wanted to stop him. In the end, they were directly taken down by Li Suyen's men. Speaking of which, the number of people guarding the treasury wasn't small. It was far more than the number of black-robe guards that Li Honyuan brought. However, this wasn't a problem of quantity. First of all, these soldiers had never seen blood, let alone holding a human life in their hands. Their imposing manner fell by a large margin. Furthermore, these ordinary soldiers were like the common people. They naturally revered the existence of the imperial family. With Li Honyuan around, who would dare to use a sword? When the black-robed guards drew their swords and went forward, they all consciously threw away their swords and obediently crouched on the ground with both hands covering their heads. The ease of entering the treasury was a little out of Jingwan's expectations. The door was opened towards the shelves that were filled with silver ingots and gold bricks. Although it was the first time she entered this kind of place, Jingwan wasn't surprised. If it was really empty and completely empty, then it would be really strange. However, the treasury is this big? Then wouldn't Qiyuan's treasury really be able to gallop wildly on horseback? This situation only exists in Jiangnan. Speaking of which, the treasury of the prefecture city is slightly bigger. However, don't be fooled by its size. Usually, it's not bad to have 10% of the shelves displaying gold and silver. In a situation like this, there might be some every year when the treasury is handed over to the treasury. Of course, there should be more at that time. After all, too much is as bad as too little. Li Hongyuan explained. So this person didn't know? Haha. Then now isn't the amount a little too much? Now was not the time to hand over the treasury. Trying to cover it up only makes it more conspicuous. Li Hongyuan casually took an ingot of silver, weighed it in his hand, and put it back. Is it fake? This was adding insult to injury. Did they think that Li Hongyuan was so incompetent that he couldn't even find out this? It's true that it's fake. However, Wan, guess what's the situation of the other treasury in Shannon Prefecture now? Jingwan instantly understood what he meant and revealed an incredulous expression. Yuan, are you saying that the silver came from other prefectures? Since the silver itself isn't fake, the origin of the silver can only be from other places. Otherwise, should the officials pay out of their own pockets, or should the merchants be generous? Since it's impossible, then this is probably the only way. Then, when you go to other places, they secretly transport these silver over. As long as they are one step ahead of you every time. If they don't notice this, they won't be on guard. It's obvious that this matter can be covered up. But now, Li Hongyuan saw through it at a glance. Jingwan silently lit a candle for those people. How could this person not understand common affairs? He was simply a demon. If they wanted to deceive him and play tricks with him, they would probably be played by him in the end. Moreover, this person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance tried to fool him. The consequences would probably be greater than the matter itself. Then what is Yuan going to do next? Set a trap for them to move the silver and then catch them in the act? I'm not interested in this kind of thing. Moreover, I'm being watched by everyone. This kind of thing isn't so easy to kill. Like a cicada shedding its shell, it also depends on the time, place, and people. Especially in a city, it's not so easy to operate. Wan, do you have any other suggestions? Leave someone to guard. Li Hongyuan shook his head. If there are too few people, it won't be of much use. We don't have to go through the main door to transport these things out. If there are too many people, we won't have enough manpower. We can barely take care of the front, but we will definitely be stretched out behind. So this is not realistic. Thinking about it, it was true. Jingwan thought about it again. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. How about we melt all the gold and silver and make a large one, the kind that can't be moved? It's easier to melt the small ones to make a big one, but it's not so easy to melt the big ones to make a small one. At that time, whether we find a way to melt it or move it elsewhere, there will be a big movement. We only need to leave a few people behind to monitor. I think those people won't have the guts to do anything to the people you leave behind. This idea is not bad. Li Hongyuan touched his chin with interest. Or we can simply move to a place where the world can see. Anyway, it can't be moved easily, and we don't have to worry about it being stolen. Plus, there are so many people guarding it. If something goes wrong, for example, lost something, wouldn't it be very interesting? Hey, you're just trying to make trouble. If it really goes missing, Jingwan will be the first to suspect me. And thinking about it, her idea was quite childish. Moreover, if you put it outside for people to see, what kind of art do you think it is? Or do you want to make it into a work of art? Li Hongyuan saw Jingwan's eyes and knew what she was thinking. He reached out and brushed his fingers across her face. Am I that kind of person? He said with a little innocence. Anyone who knew Li Hongyuan even a little bit would think that he was that kind of person. Not seeing Jingwan's unchanging eyes, Li Hongyuan sighed with a little sadness. The most important thing for me to do now is to accompany my wife. Being able to do what needs to be done is already not bad. Where would I have the leisure to do other things? Wan doesn't understand my intentions, really. Looking at Jingwan, that pair of eyes became more and more bitter. Jingwan couldn't bear it anymore and put her palm on his face. She clearly knew that he was pretending, but that face was still too foul, making people think that she did something heinous to him. Li Honyuan held her hand and took the opportunity to rub against it with a gentle smile. Jingwan pushed him away in disgust. He was clearly doing something immoral, but it gave people a very warm feeling. People who saw this kind of scene probably wouldn't think that it was fake. That kind of feeling couldn't be faked, and even if it was fake, it wouldn't be to this extent. In front of Jin Qinhuang Fei, Jin Qinhuang's entire person was completely different. He probably put her at the tip of his heart and loved her miserably. Digression. There's one more chapter later. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653576. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Exempt from registration. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikugo mobile reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 304. Since they had already decided to melt the silver ingots and gold bricks, there was no need to be sloppy. Lu. The melting place was just next to it, but there was no need for it at this time. What was needed was to make a large mold and move out all the gold and silver. It might be too late today. However, this was just a matter of saying one sentence. Li Honyuan took Jingwan for a stroll along the way before leisurely going back. And the various Darren were anxiously waiting until Jin Qinhuang appeared again. However, before they could relax, Jin Qinhuang threw them a heavy bomb. Jin Qinhuang expressed that when he went to the treasury just now and saw so much gold and silver, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration and had a good idea. In Chongzhou Prefecture, wherever the scenery was good, he would prepare to make something there. Then, the next time the capital came to withdraw money, he would directly send it back and let Lu Qingdi have a look. He was now brainstorming to see what would be better to make. But those who knew the origin of this batch of gold and silver, whether they were alienated from Chongzhou Prefecture or not, their vision turned black, and they almost fainted. Actually, relatively speaking, the people of Chongzhou Prefecture were a little better. It must be known that the other treasury was completely empty. What should they do? What should they do? However, some people were more concerned about whether this was Jin Qinhuang's sudden whim, or he realized that he was deliberately doing this. Although in essence it was more or less the same, but if it was the latter, it could only mean that Jin Qinhuang was not easy to fool. The areas that were not problematic in the accounts would have problems. All of you are mute. Did you not understand Ben Wang's meaning? Li Honyuan supported his chin and said lightly, "It was best not to do anything, and just let those gold and silver obediently stay in the treasury." The reason why they were mute was because they did not want to go up and add bricks and tiles when they knew that it was a trap prepared for them. But if they did not open their mouths, everything would be fine? Naive. Then they smiled stiffly and started to give their own suggestions insincerely. Perhaps it was to stall for time. The things they said were extremely complicated. Many parts were put together and every position was fragmented. In order to increase their persuasiveness, they even gave lengthy speeches and quoted classics, as if it would be intolerable if they didn't use it. They even argued until their faces turned red. Li Honyuan nodded from time to time. No one knew whether he was nodding in agreement or praising the wonderful speeches of the officials. In the end, he said, "Everyone is right. It's just that it's hard to get everyone to agree. According to this prince's opinion, let's make it into an ingot. It's simple and saves time and effort. It also has a good meaning. It's a complete whole, and there's no need to worry about losing a part of it. It's settled then." Li Honyuan made the final decision. Everyone's faces cracked as they looked at Li Honyuan. Their eyes clearly said, "Are you kidding me?" Li Honyuan nodded. "That's right, I'm just teasing you." Li Honyuan didn't get angry, and he didn't cause any physical harm to them. However, almost everyone felt physically and mentally exhausted. Seeing that the time was almost up, Li Hongyuan went back to accompany his wife at a leisurely pace. Today, he spent a lot of effort to face such a group of rough men, and he liked each and every one of them. Jin Qinhuang's mood was a little unhappy, but their wonderful expressions before barely pleased him, so he didn't care that much. Then, Mu Gonggong stood up again. In their eyes, this castrated dog was the most likely. After all, when facing Jin Qinhuang, they dared to be angry but didn't dare to speak up. They didn't even dare to show it. Now that they were facing Mu Gonggong, it wasn't like that. But Mu Gonggong didn't mind at all. Who let him be so confident? No matter how angry these people were, they couldn't do anything to him. Facing these people who couldn't wait for him to die, but couldn't do anything to him, his heart still felt a little vile pleasure. To let Jingwan know of his thoughts, there was only one sentence. How could the word cheap be enough? Mu Gonggong only had one purpose for staying behind, and that was to pass on Wang Ye's words. He allowed them to go back and tidy up. Starting tomorrow, they would have to sleep on the floor in this courtyard. You don't need to bring too many things, and the servants also need to bring along. Who let your Chongzhoufu be so shabby, to prepare such a shabby place for your mistress? It's also a little bigger than a palm. If there are too many things, there's no place to separate them. If there are too many people, there's no place to step on. You don't need to worry about food. Wang Fei has never treated people harshly in this aspect. Oh, I almost forgot. Wang Ye also said that if there are official matters that have not been dealt with, remember to go back and deal with them. Those are the important matters and cannot be delayed. Cannot be delayed. Let them go back earlier. It would have been dealt with earlier. Jingwan also knew that these people had been tortured badly by Li Hongyuan. But when she thought of the financial matters, she couldn't sympathize with them at all. In comparison, Li Hongyuan's little prank was simply a small matter and harmless. Naturally, no one dared to neglect what the living king of hell wanted to do. Even if they wanted to slack off, there would be people who would use special methods to remind them. And this time, the place Li Hongyuan chose was rather special. It was in front of a teacher's building. Although the significance of this teacher's building to Chongzhoufu was far less than the significance of Kaming Academy to Kaming Prefecture, but from a name, one would know its significance to scholars. Even though everyone could come to this place, but most of the people who came and went were still scholars. Suddenly creating such a big commotion, it naturally attracted attention immediately. Then, they fell over each other to spread the news. More and more people gathered, not just those scholars. There were those who boldly went forward to inquire. After knowing the situation, many people were unable to restrain their anger, especially those scholars. This kind of action was simply an insult and stain to the teacher's building. Even if it was Jin Wangye, he could not do this. The voices of dissatisfaction grew louder and louder. There were even some people who disregarded everything and went for to stop it. The situation became more and more intense, and it seemed that there was going to be an all-out fight. It must be known that because of the previous academy examinations, the matter had become very big. Until now, the provincial examinations had not been carried out. On the surface, the matter seemed to have temporarily calmed down, but it was only on the surface. Everyone knew that the longer the matter was dragged on, the worse the situation would become. They had long heard that the imperial court had sent a Wangye as an imperial envoy, but the other party had not done anything until now. This resentment had accumulated and deepened. In order to shift the hatred and also to create trouble for Li Hongyuan, so that Li Hongyuan had no energy to focus on the salt policy, the people of Jiangnan's officialdom did not lack in publicizing Li Hongyuan's glorious deeds. A person with no redeeming qualities was sent to deal with the matters of the scholars. What did the imperial court treat them as? They were hot-blooded just to serve the imperial court. In the end, they were treated like this? Because Kai Mingfu was not involved in the academy examinations, the scholars there were not affected. Naturally, they would not do anything to Li Hongyuan. This Chongzhoufu was not the same. It was a direct disaster area. even though the matter of the scholars hanging themselves did not occur, but their feelings of anger were not little at all. Li Hongyuan's action at this moment was simply like hitting the muzzle of a gun and detonating a barrel of gunpowder. Anger burned reason, and then directly acted. In such a situation, not only did no one stand out to stop it, on the contrary, there were people fanning the flames. Otherwise, the situation would not have escalated so quickly. Speaking of which, even though the officials had been detained by Li Hongyuan, not all of the officials of Chongzhoufu were present. In reality, there were many officials who did not even have the right to stand in front of Li Hongyuan. These people could not see their superiors, but that did not mean they did not have a tacit understanding. When they learned that Li Hongyuan had chosen to forge large gold and silver ingots in front of the teacher's building, many people were secretly delighted. The opportunity had come. Some people had received instructions beforehand. In the chaos, not only did they act against the enemy, they also acted against their own people. From fist to flesh, to knives to flesh, it was only a matter of an instant. Angry roars were mixed with blood-curdling screams. There were also cries of murder and death coming from who knows where. However, if one were to look closely, they would discover that in the chaotic crowd, there were a few people who would always make a move at the most appropriate time. They were agile and decisively stopped the fatal attacks. Therefore, no matter how chaotic the situation was, there were no casualties. The first to notice these people were naturally those who fanned the flames. They thought, "Oh no," and secretly prepared to retreat. However, they would often be caught from behind before they could take 3 steps back. Just when they did not know how to end the situation, a group of men in black seemed to have descended from the sky. Like sharp blades, they ruthlessly pierced through and separated the people at lightning speed. Anyone who resisted would be unceremoniously attacked. They would not faint, nor would they die. They only made them lose their ability to move for a short time. In the blink of an eye, the chaotic situation was completely under control. Then, the sound of gongs and drums rang, accompanied by the sound of quickly retreat. 2 groups of soldiers quickly arrived and isolated the unrelated people outside. Li Hongyuan was at the front, followed by Yu Zhongqing, Li Suyen, and an E. At this moment, the 4 of them had the same thing on them. It was as cold as the edge of a blade. It's just a small matter. How can it cause such a ruckus? The small official in charge of this matter immediately came out and knelt on the ground. He was about to explain. Li Hongyuan's eyes swept over. Take him down. Remove him from his position and investigate. He did not allow the other party to say a word. Li Suyen flipped off the horse and saluted Li Hongyuan. Then he just casually waved his hand. Then the people who were mixed in the chaos immediately came out. Everyone was carrying 1 or more people in their hands. Looking at their clothes, they were those who participated in the task assigned by Li Hongyuan. Most of them were there, but there were 3 who were wearing student uniforms. One of them seemed to be very famous among the students. Because they saw him being treated like this, even the students who were unable to move had some expressions on their faces. "Students, please don't be angry. Wang Ye is here in person. He will give us justice." He hurriedly dissuaded them. When he looked at Li Hongyuan, he was neither servile nor overbearing. Before he was modest, but now he was arrogant. No one felt that his attitude was wrong. Many people were convinced by his pride and felt that this was the role model of a scholar. Li Hongyuan sneered. "Wang Ye is here in person. Who told you?" That person was slightly stuck. "I heard that Jin Wang Ye is handsome and unparalleled. Anyone who sees him, no one doesn't recognize him." "Heard? Where did you hear it?" "This is the first time Ben Wang left the capital. Regarding this face, how could it be known to everyone? Before you speak, you should think of a draft." When everyone heard it, it seemed that it was true. Not to mention that the other party was a member of the imperial family. Generally, people wouldn't dare to talk about him. Moreover, he was a man. Qi Yuan didn't have the so-called male style. Who would talk about a man's appearance for no reason? Even if it was a famous courtesan somewhere, it would be good if her beauty could leave the land. Can't say it? I know quite a lot about you, so I hope you can maintain this lofty and unyielding character. Li Hongyuan's voice fell. Li Suyen cooperated and took out a booklet. She opened it and read out the other party's name, age, place of birth, and family background. It was a determined, diligent, filial, loyal, and righteous person. Although his family was poor, he had a proud and upright image. For months ago, a windfall fell from the sky. A huge sum of 50,000 taels of silver. He built a mansion, bought servants, and bought 4 beautiful concubines. He doted on his concubines and neglected his wife. He injured his father-in-law and brother-in-law. He ran amok in the village and joined hands with the academy's professors to secretly suppress 3 other students. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653577. HTML chapter error. Please click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 305. Li Hongyuan raised his hand, and Li Suyen stopped her recitation. Shi Huan net went to L. Come, tell me, where did the 50,000 taels come from? Although the scholar tried his best to remain calm, his experience was limited, and his temperament was far from it. Even the clan leader Pei would change his face in front of Li Hongyuan, let alone a character like him. His pale face had long betrayed him. After a long time, he finally found his voice. This student does not know what your highness is talking about. You do not know? No problem. Li Suyen, take him back. He does not need to say anything. Just give him the punishment of the discipline commission. If he is still alive, no matter what he has done, we will let bygones be bygones. I will also personally give him 1,000,000 taels. This money, he can use it however he wants, and no one will question him. Yes, Your Highness, please do not worry. No matter what kind of person he is, no one who can withstand the punishment of the Discipline Commission has appeared yet. This subject is also very much looking forward to it. Li Suyen was a man of few words, but now she spouted some nonsense. She looked at the scholar like a knife, with extreme cruelty. What kind of place was the Discipline Commission? Many people probably did not know, especially outside of the capital. Those who knew of its existence, and how terrifying it was, were even fewer. But, unfortunately, this scholar knew. When he heard Li Hongyuan and Li Suyen's words, he trembled and was so scared that he wet himself. Your Highness, please spare my life. This student will speak everything. Then, like pouring beans, he spilled out all the people and things he knew. He was already a scholar, and did not need to participate in the college examination, but he needed to participate in the provincial examination. This kind of person should not have participated in the college examination's dance cheating case, but he did, and played an important role in it. Originally, he had no background. His great ability was only because he met Chongzhou Prefecture's arbiter young master by chance. They were birds of a feather. In the original plan, it was not just the college examination, but also the township examination after the college examination. However, after the matter was exposed, the township examination was not carried out. He played the role of an upright person and spoke out for the students in the college examination. As a result, his reputation among the students grew. Hearing this, the people around him were stunned, especially those students who were wholeheartedly protecting him. The usually upright, elegant, modest, and friendly person was actually all fake, hypocritical, dirty, despicable, and shameless. They didn't dare to believe it, but the truth was right in front of them. It was he himself who said it. It wasn't a confession made out of torture. It was just a few words of intimidation. Just a moment ago he was still proud and unyielding, but in the blink of an eye, He became such a coward. They couldn't even deceive themselves and not believe it. They once had high hopes for him, but at this moment they were filled with resentment. Their eyes were burning with anger, and they really wanted to pounce on him, to drink his blood and eat his flesh. However, because they couldn't move and the people outside were obstructed, they could only watch as the shameless person begged for mercy with tears and snot. Suddenly, a rock was thrown in from the outside and brushed past the side of his head. If he was hit by it, he would definitely bleed on the spot. Perhaps it was that person who took the lead and found a channel for others to vent their anger, throwing in all sorts of things. "Stop, don't be rude in front of His Highness." With a shout, the people outside also quieted down. Li Honyuan didn't look at him again. "Put them in jail." Li Suyen, everyone he mentioned, including everyone on your list, from the lowest students to the Chongzhou Prefecture Arbiter. Put them all in jail. Send someone to take charge of this matter and investigate it overnight. Tomorrow, this prince wants to know the truth of the Chongzhou Prefecture's college examination cheating case. In addition, immediately send someone to the capital of the 4 counties and detain the 4 arbiters at home. They are not allowed to contact any outsiders, and wait for this prince to personally interrogate them. It was fine if he didn't move, but once he did, it was like a thunderbolt. "Yes." Li Suyen responded and sent out 40 people on the spot. Another 100 blackguards stepped out and arrested people in Chongzhou Prefecture. In reality, the people detaining the arbiters of the 4 counties had set off a day ago. The reason why they said it now was to alert the enemy. By the time they heard the news and took action, they were all under surveillance. 500 blackguards were all in Chongzhou Prefecture? Who told you that there were only 500 blackguards as reinforcements? Not only the arbiters, but also the arbiters of the various prefectures, and even the arbiters of the counties were all under surveillance. Those sent out now were just for show. The arbiter of Chongzhou Prefecture was among the officials. When he heard the words of the student, he was already trembling like a sieve. At this moment, his legs went weak and he fainted. The other officials around him hurriedly avoided him as if he was the plague. Not to mention supporting him, at this moment they were afraid that they would have anything to do with him. 2 blackguards stepped forward and unceremoniously lifted him up and dragged him away. Even so, no one dared to say a word. As for the other relevant personnel present, they were all taken away. After dealing with this matter swiftly and decisively, Li Honyuan looked at the group of people who were paralyzed on the ground. "We all want to cause trouble today." In the eyes of these students, Li Honyuan came down to go through the motions, and it could be said that they deeply detested him. However, that was in the past. At this very moment, this impression could be said to have taken a 180-degree turn. It was very clear that this Jin Qinhuang was not inactive, but had already acted in secret. He had grasped a lot of evidence and was only waiting to act. They were misled by others and did unwise things. Thinking of this, many people's expressions changed. It was only now that they reacted. They had been used by others, used by their anger and ignorance. Among them, another student who was probably more reputable struggled to stand up and bowed deeply towards Li Honyuan to express his apology. Then he explained the whole story of the matter. Thinking about it again, the reason why they were so agitated was not because they had been incited again. The perpetrator was also these people who were brought out. Thinking about it now, this student's heart is extremely guilty. The first thing to study is to be sensible. This time, not only was I not sensible, I also believed in rumors and deeply misunderstood Wang Ye, asking for Wang Ye's forgiveness. Misunderstood Ben Wang? It's not to the extent. Ben Wang has nothing other than a body of skin. In the entire capital, who doesn't know who doesn't know? The reason why His Majesty appointed Ben Wang as the imperial envoy is because Ben Wang does not touch any aspect and is not stingy with one. What Ben Wang wants to do, no one can control me, and I'm not afraid of offending anyone. Because of this, people are afraid. This matter is very big and involves many people. There's probably no one more suitable than Ben Wang to be the imperial envoy. Those people in the capital have revealed a lot to the officials in Jiangnan. It seems that these people have also revealed a lot to you. Then, have they not told you that Ben Wang is a person who will seek revenge for the smallest grievance? If you fall into Ben Wang's hands, even if you don't die, you will lose a layer of skin. If you are injured or die, Ben Wang's reputation will only be blackened by a layer. You will have nothing, and the others will be quiet. The people who have a headache over this matter will probably not be left with a headache. Many people's faces changed, but at this time, they did not rashly do anything that angered them. Ben Wang is unreasonable, but there is no other way. Who let Ben Wang marry a reasonable Wang Fei? If Ben Wang were to dispose of you today, Wang Fei would blame Ben Wang later. Every injustice has its perpetrator. Every debt has its debtor. Today, Ben Wang will let you all go. Li Hongyuan lightly said. The students who were looking for trouble breathed a sigh of relief. Facing a Wang Fei, no matter what his true temperament was, this pressure was also very big. And today, even if they were used, it was indeed their fault. Receiving punishment was also a matter of course. However, even if this Wang Fei really had no redeeming qualities, as long as he could keep watch and make the people below him obediently do things, it was good. There was no superior who would do everything personally. Many thanks to Wang Ye. They breathed a sigh of relief, but the accompanying officials stretched a sheet of skin. Every injustice has its perpetrator. Every debt has its debtor. They were the perpetrator. They were the perpetrator. The meaning of Jin Wang Fei's words could not be more obvious. It had only been 2 to 3 days, but they felt like they had lost 10 Jin. If they were to be picked on again, it was simply unimaginable. More importantly, they had the intention to use the students to scheme against Jin Qinhuang. From the looks of it now, it was clear that he was the one who beat them at their own game and schemed against them instead. No one died, the swiftest suppression, and the capture of the thorn. None of these were not the most powerful proof. And the result was also obvious. Using the more prestigious students as an example, using the most incisive facts to tell them what the truth was, then following this, no matter who Jin Qinhuang wanted to capture, even if it was someone who was once revered, no one would stand up. Because there was no need for someone to guide them, they would also subconsciously think that the person they revered perhaps was the same as the person they trusted, with 2 faces and 2 faces. As a result, Jin Wang Fei's following actions would be much simpler. Choosing the location in front of the teacher's building was not a foolish decision, but a part of the plan. It was deliberately set up. It could not be more brilliant. Jin Wang Fei had been in Kai Ming Fu for so long and had nothing to do. Did they really think that he was deliberately standing there as a target to attract everyone's attention? The other matters had already been carried out in secret. Otherwise, where did the evidence in his hands come from? It also made people have no choice but to suspect. Did he also have more evidence in his hands? The accompanying officials on the surface said that they were investigating and secretly said that they were helping. But in reality, what was going on? True and false, false and true. At this time, who could still trust? The person you trust could be said to be the person who would ruthlessly stab you in the back. No matter if it was one of your own people or not. As long as there was suspicion, all the huddles would fall apart. However, even if they knew the other party's intention, they still had to be led by the nose. This was not a conspiracy, but a genuine open conspiracy. There was no way to break it. Including Governor Su, they were all caught in a predicament. After all, compared to other people, he had more shameful things. And towards Li Hongyuan, this person, it was very frightening. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653578. HTML chapter error. Click here to report no registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Mobile Edition Reading Website, mbicken.com. Chapter 3:06. In the end, was all of this his arrangement, or was there an expert guiding him? No matter who it was, to some extent, it was a threat. Sigh. Personally, Governor Sue was more inclined to the former, but there was no evidence, no proof. Moreover, he was also in a predicament and did not dare to act rashly. After all, if it was really as he expected, the slightest movement would be detected by the other party. Then everything would be over. Therefore, he could only follow the other party and act according to the circumstances. Wanya, the gold and silver from the treasury, has arrived. Li Hongyuan nodded indifferently. The craftsmen in charge of the casting did not dare to be negligent and stepped up their work. Although there were already people guessing that Jin Qinhuang did this for a purpose, but to have 2 big gold ingots in front of the teacher's building, no matter how they thought about it, it was still uncomfortable. Wanya, regarding your intentions, this student is really unable to speculate. Presumably, it is not a useless move. This student boldly asks, is it possible to know the reason? What do you think this gold and silver is? Li Hongyuan did not answer and asked instead. And this undoubtedly led to a lot of conjectures in the brain. Many people revealed an expression of sudden realization. However, regardless of whether it was a real realization or not, regardless of what they thought that what they thought was the truth and did not object to this matter. On the contrary, they felt that Jin Qinhuang was wise. The officials looked at each other in dismay. They did not think that Jin Qinhuang's light words solved the root of the problem. This, not to mention the students, even they could not help but think more. Of course, it was all basically a conspiracy. No matter what, they would not pursue the answer from Jin Qinhuang. His specious words seemed to indicate that some things could not be announced. Everyone was understanding people. How could they go and make things difficult for Jin Qinhuang? That was really too insensible. Li Hongyuan faintly hooked the corner of his mouth. If he could not handle such a small matter, wouldn't he, Li Hongyuan, have lived in vain? Ben Wang has already written to the imperial court. The imperial court will send people to take over these gold and silver as soon as possible. During this time, you might as well help guard it together. That student was startled and immediately recovered. This student is duty-bound, with a bit of firmness of being entrusted with a heavy responsibility. After that, more and more gold and silver arrived, until all the silver in the treasury was gathered together. More and more people gathered around, and more than 99% of them had never seen so much money before. Boxes after boxes were filled with silver ingots and gold bricks. They unconsciously began to salivate, imagining how great it would be if all this money was theirs. However, seeing more and more officials, they could only dream about it. The number of people discussing this was definitely not a small number. However, most of the thoughts were that their Chongzhou government had quite a lot of money. However, according to Jin Qinhuang's intention, there seemed to be a problem with this money. Seeing the silver ingots and gold bricks being poured into the furnace one after another, the heat waves spreading in all directions made people sweat profusely. However, not many people left. Such a scene would probably only happen once in a lifetime. Your Highness, why don't you return first? Yu Zhongqing suggested. Li Hongyuan also had the same idea. It was so hot, who would want to stay here and suffer? He pulled on the reins and turned the horse around. With a squeeze of the horse's belly, the horse began to gallop. When the others saw the movement, respectfully sending off Your Highness. With one person taking the lead, more and more people followed one after another. The black-clothed guards only left behind 10 people. The rest all followed Li Hongyuan and left. And in the outermost area, a green cloth horse was quietly parked by the side of the road. An ordinary coachman sat at the front. The curtains and curtains of the carriage were half drawn, and there was also a beaded curtain. Because of this, the people outside could not see what was going on inside, but the people inside could see everything that was going on outside. The horse galloped past. Speaking of which, the carriage was not considered eye-catching, but it was noticed by Li Hongyuan. A light glance without any emotion. And the person in the carriage could not stop her heart from palpitating. Her slender jade hands covered it, rising and falling along with the rise and fall of her chest. Her upright sitting posture could not stop leaning towards the window, watching Li Hongyuan's departing figure. This was the man she was going to marry, although he was probably a concubine. But this kind of man did not seem to make people resist, especially just now, when he sat high on the horse's back, seemingly mocking and ridiculing, easily resolving the situation. It was so dazzling. Miss, Jin Qinhuang has already gone far, we. A person who was probably a servant girl asked softly. Let's go. The woman's voice carried a natural gentleness, like a spring breeze that made people feel comfortable. Without needing to specifically instruct, the carriage slowly moved. The sound was clearly very soft. Under normal circumstances, the coachman outside would not be able to hear it. It could be seen that this coachman was not simple. It was just that the woman thought that all of this would pass quietly like this, that no one would know of her arrival. But was it really so? The person who had gone far away. Investigate. Li Hongyuan abruptly opened his mouth. Yes. Others might not understand what Li Hongyuan wanted to investigate, but an E answered naturally. He hadn't followed Li Hongyuan for a day or two. Although he still didn't understand his master's thoughts and shouldn't make wild guesses, he still had the necessary eyesight. With one look from Li Hongyuan, an E already understood everything. When Li Hongyuan returned to the side courtyard, he didn't care about the officials who had fallen behind him. He dismounted from his horse, threw away the reins, and directly returned to the inner courtyard. Your Highness has returned. A maidservant hurriedly served tea. Another maidservant went to pour some warm water for him to wash his face and hands. Li Hongyuan casually cleaned himself and threw the towel back onto the tray. Then he went to change his clothes and came out. Where's Wan Wan? Replying to Your Highness, the princess consort is entertaining a guest. The Futai madam just left, and another person came. Oh. Li Hongyuan smiled mysteriously. What did you bring to the door? The old madam of the mansion brought a pot of golden peony. I don't know the details of the people who came later, but it is said that there is a money tree. Golden peony? Money tree? Li Hongyuan murmured. Oh, it's really to his liking. Li Hongyuan didn't go to find Jingwan. He sat down and slowly drank tea. Before he finished his cup of tea, Jingwan came back. Behind her, there were people carrying things. A Yuan is back. Has everything been settled? Jingwan sat down beside him. Li Hongyuan handed over the teacup in his hand. It's just a small matter. Naturally, it didn't take much effort. It's just that this prince went out for a trip, and Wan Wan's harvest is quite rich. Looking at the two trees in front of him, he said, Golden peony, money tree, it really lives up to its name. That's right. Jingwan chuckled. The golden peony was a golden tree. From the pot to the soil, from the trunk, branches, flowers, and leaves, everything was of the same color. At least, because of the excellent craftsmanship, it looked very lifelike. People who didn't know that there really was such a special mutated peony in the world. The money tree was much taller than the golden peony. The trunk, branches, and leaves were all made of jade. This jade was naturally not of the same color, but not only the veins of the leaves, but also the texture of the bark. In addition to being slightly cool to the touch was very lifelike. Although it was clear that it was not carved out of a whole piece of jade, there was almost no interface in the appearance. Besides the money on it, Jingwan couldn't see what material it was made of, but it was also very delicate. What's in the box? Li Hongyuan asked. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653579. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 307. Bodhi beads? There are quite a lot of varieties. Li Hongyuan stretched out his hand and used his finger to pick up a string, 108 small Vajra stones. He casually tossed it aside and picked up another string, 8 sunstones. He picked them up one by one to take a closer look. 21 moonstones, 14 golden toadstones, 10 five eyes and 6 eyes, 12 mantu stones, 27 lotus seat stones, 27 white jade stones, 54 unicorn eyes, 54 plant seeds, 108 phoenix eyes, and finally this. He picked up a long string, 1,080 stars and moons. Li Hongyuan did not throw the last string out directly. Instead, he played with them one by one in his hand. The quality of each type is very good. The selection of the Bodhi beads was meticulously done. The craftsmanship is also perfect. The texture is excellent, and the maintenance is appropriate. It can be seen that a lot of effort was put into it. Which family sent this? In the whole of Jiangnan, even the officials with the world's background would not be able to take out 1 or 2 strings at a time. After all, this is not something that can be bought with money. Relatively speaking, if you get such a thing, unless you are the mainstay of the family, it is more likely that you will bring it back to show filial piety to the elders in the clan. Jingwan nodded. Because of her grandmother in her previous life, she had some understanding of the Bodhi beads. In her previous life, it was not particularly difficult to obtain all kinds of Bodhi beads, but it was different here. Although she did not know very clearly, these Bodhi beads were very widely distributed. This was indeed not something that could be bought with money. It was something that could be encountered, but not sought. If you could get 1 or 2 strings, you would either keep it for yourself or give it away. It was quite difficult to deliberately collect so many, especially the finished products. In the hands of some very important people, don't talk about buying or begging. If they knew that you were spying on them, you would be directly kicked out. It was sent by someone. The specific person did not say who it was. Only a post was left. I took a look, and there was no name on it. It should be the Bodhi beads that were collected directly, right? Li Hongyuan nodded. From this craftsmanship, it is almost certain that it was made by the same person. It should not have been made more than 3 years ago. A Yuan is very familiar with the Bodhi beads. I only know about 3 or 4 types of Bodhi beads. I can't say that I know a lot. Li Hongyuan threw the prayer beads back. No matter who sent it, ask someone to take a look at it later. If there's no problem, Wan can keep it. Although in my opinion, these things that were deliberately made to curry favor have long lost their original value and meaning. They're just a relatively rare plaything. Take them back and give them away. Wan hasn't touched it, has she? Jingwan was speechless. Isn't it too late to say this now? It's true that I haven't touched her before. You're the one who touched her, aren't you? As long as you didn't touch it. Li Hongyuan didn't care about himself at all. Wan, do you think the person who gave the prayer beads has some special meaning? What special meaning could there be? Not to mention Qi Yuan, even in the previous dynasty, the common people were more fond of Buddhist items. Buddhist beads, Buddhist statues, and the like could not be more commonly seen. From high officials and nobles to commoners, how many people could see them? Could it be cursing you to become a monk and cursing me to become a nun? Yuan, aren't you too free? Li Hongyuan nodded. I'm quite free. It's not as busy as I expected. I have to deal with these useless people, but they all wash their necks clean and stick their necks under the knife. It's not challenging at all. His words were full of disdain. That's because you're not the one doing the work. Haven't you heard that the higher-ups run their mouths, but the subordinates run their legs? You're so free. It's all because other people are busy. He was a classic example of taking advantage of others, but still acting innocent. He really deserved a beating. If others heard this, they would curse him. Even if the higher-ups worked hard, without me taking charge of the overall situation, it's useless even if those idiots ran their legs. Even if they're free, Wan can't take credit for me. Jingwan looked at a certain someone's smug and slightly aggrieved expression. She felt that this man was simply getting smaller and smaller. She really didn't know what to say. It's just that the matter is too big. We have to be careful. Don't overturn the boat in a small canal. Li Hongyuan sighed softly. With a wife like Wan Wan who always keeps her reason spurring me, it's hard to be complacent and careless. Don't flatter me. Jing Wan had always been very clear about her own weight. This is the truth. Why doesn't Wan Wan believe it? The living king of hell expressed his helplessness. It was still the same sentence. If it was just him, it didn't matter at all if something happened. Because she was here, he didn't allow any mistakes. Jing Wan glanced at him and was too lazy to pay attention to him. She went into the inner room to change her clothes. Li Hongyuan clicked his tongue and looked the things in front of him again. They were all expensive. This was just the beginning. His expression became indifferent. No matter who sends things in, don't let your princess touch it. I'll have Joe follow them. Yes. Nanny Gong replied. She didn't promise anything. She would only do her best to protect her master. Occasionally, the maids didn't quite understand Li Hongyuan's words, but Nanny Gong could take it for granted. They didn't doubt anything. They just felt that Nanny Gong was very powerful. However, because the powerful impression of Nanny Gong had long been deeply ingrained and they were used to it, they never mentioned it in front of Jingwan. In this way, Jingwan repeatedly missed some opportunities to find out the truth. In fact, neither Li Hongyuan nor Nanny Gong deliberately hid it. Li Hongyuan raised his chin and Nanny Gong went out. She just said a few words at the door. Jingwan changed her clothes and came out. Jiao had already come over. He checked everything one by one and made sure there was no problem. Li Hongyuan nodded. In the future, you don't have to go out for tasks. Just be a doctor in the mansion. In one sentence, he decided Jiao's future. Yes. Jiao replied naturally. He also didn't feel sad or happy. In reality, for a shadow guard, which was a highly dangerous occupation, being a physician was naturally not dangerous. In fact, it was much more relaxed and carefree. For a young and strong shadow guard, it could be considered a great thing. After all, it wasn't because Rin Zhong didn't complete the mission or was labeled as a bad person. On the contrary, it was because it was Rin Zhong that it was like this. They all knew how much their master cared about the female master. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that it was more important than their own lives. If there was any danger, then their master would not hesitate to give the order to protect the female master. However, Jiao was used to following Li Hongyuan's orders. He wouldn't have any opinions or emotions. For Jingwan, the female master, he used to have some feelings in his heart, but now he didn't. He completely approved of her. He used to be a secret guard, number 9. He was good at medical skills and disguise. Wan Wan, give him a new name. Li Hongyuan said casually. Things like naming were usually the master's business. However, at this time, no one would ask Li Hongyuan for any special intention at this moment. Jingwan sat beside Li Hongyuan. Number 9, so he'll be named after 9. Add a surname in front. What was his previous surname? Master, most of the secret guards have no roots. They don't know their origin or surname. It's the same for their gender. In this case, then in the future, follow Nanny Gong's surname. He'll be called Gongjiao. Although there was no sadness or joy, when Jingwan said the last 2 words, Jiao, no, Gongjiao in the future, still trembled slightly. From now on, he would no longer only have a code name. He was a person who lived in the dark. He had a name and surname, which also meant that he had roots. Thank you, Master. Jingwan just nodded and said no more. Li Hongyuan looked at her sideways. I thought you would let him be surnamed Luo. Everything goes too far. What's mine is Wan Wan's. There's no need to distinguish so clearly. Everything goes too far. Jingwan gritted her teeth and repeated. Bastard, don't you understand human language? Okay. Wan Wan has always been cautious. Anyway, it's not the first time. Jingwan was not sure that the blue veins on her forehead jumped. He knew what she meant, but he just had to twist it. Shut up. Li Hongyuan showed a very shocked expression. Isn't Wan Wan always gentle and virtuous? How can she be so fierce? She's fierce to me. At the end of his words, he felt wronged. Li Hongyuan, I told you to shut up. This time, the blue veins on Jingwan's forehead really jumped. She really wanted to kick him. Jingwan's voice was not soft this time. Even the people outside heard it clearly. Their expressions were quite interesting. Speaking of which, Wang Fei's temper had always been very good. What did Wang Yi do this time to make Wang Fei so angry? But Wang Fei was the first person who dared to tell Wang Yi to shut up. As for the other people in the room, those who did not have much self-control covered their mouths. Their shoulders shook, and it was very difficult for them to hold back their laughter. Li Hongyuan saw that his wife was really angry. He did not pretend anymore. His lips slightly hooked up, and he waved his hand to let everyone leave. Naturally, no one dared to delay. They all bowed and quickly left. Li Hongyuan smiled faintly and pulled Jingwan into his arms. Jingwan glared at him, but the smile on his face did not disappear. Instead, it became more obvious. Why is my little sweetheart so attractive? Wan, don't you think so? Jingwan's face became even darker. But her little bit of strength, compared to other women, was much greater. In front of Li Hongyuan, it was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Attractive? Are you trying to tease me? She gritted her teeth and wanted to bite him to death. How could that be? This husband just saw that Wan was so serious and wanted to joke with you. You really are my sweetheart, my life. Jingwan cursed in her heart. This bastard. If you tried to reason with him, he would purposely twist and turn your words 180 times. If you tried to be tough with him, he would say sweet words as soon as he opened his mouth. If you were angry with him, he would stick to you like sticky candy. In the end, she was the only one who was depressed. It was not that she did not warn herself not to lower herself to his level, but every time it happened, she could not control herself at all. Her self-control was getting worse and worse. Jingwan could not break free. She bit his neck mercilessly until her mouth was full of blood. Li Hongyuan did not even make a sound, let alone struggle. The corners of his mouth curled up and his eyes closed slightly. He looked like he was enjoying it. After Jingwan finished biting, she raised her head and deliberately licked the blood at the corner of her mouth. She wanted to show off to him. In the end, when she saw Li Hongyuan's expression, her heart skipped a beat. She failed to show off and even provoked a certain nerve of his. She knew that this man was mentally ill. Was this the reaction of a normal person? Wan, have you vented your anger? Do you want another 2 bites? His smile was so charming that it could turn people upside down. No need. I've already vented my anger. Really? Sure enough, Wan is the best. You vented your anger so easily. He rubbed his thumb on Jingwan's lips and stained it with his own blood. He slowly withdrew his thumb and licked it. His eyes were unusually explicit. Although she knew it was very dangerous, Jingwan could not stop her heart from trembling. Help, she was not normal either. Wan knows what's going on with your husband, right? In fact, in comparison, I'd rather taste Wan's blood. It's so delicious. What happened next was indescribable. Sure enough, the final result was 100 times worse than expected. Once again, Jingwan's body went limp. She probably would not have the chance to turn things around in this lifetime. However, as long as the husband's heart did not change. So what if she lived like this for the rest of her life? Jingwan gently rubbed her face on his arm. Her face became more and more beautiful with a smile, a happy smile. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653582. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version reading website, mbicken.com. That you're tuning in to the Echo Reads YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.